welcome to Them's Writin Words, a podcast discussing selected fanfictions from the world of pastel horse literature. My name is Scribbler, and I will be your moderator today, inasmuch as I moderate anything with any degree of viable accuracy. Joining me in this discussion, we have Shadow of Cygnus,
Crow,
Goody Serenade,
Caw?
Ilya Leonov,
I will be the fellow in the corner.
Suni, aka Honey, aka Mary DeLugo.
Last time I'm changing my name, I promise.
And for this special edition of Them's Writin Words, Lost Narrator.
Oh, hi.
Today we are looking at Sunny's choice, Silent Ponyville by Sam Rose. The synopsis, as she's going to read it, is...
Pinkie Pie is being tormented by horrific nightmares. Unable to deal with it by herself anymore, she seeks out Twilight's help. But will it have been the best decision when she finds herself alone in an abandoned, fog-filled Ponyville?
The story was published on the 11th of July 2011, with editions made on 20th of January 2012, and then 11th of August 2015, and it clocks in at 30,459 words. So to begin with, we're going to have the spoiler-free aspect of the review, and then I'll let people know when we're into spoilers. This is probably the most infamous story, infamous, that we've discussed on this podcast, so we'll see how we go. Because last time we had a fandom classic was My Roommate is a Vampire, and that was an interesting one. So with this one, tags. Do we believe they are accurate? The tags being gore, dark, horror, sad, and crossover. And the reasons why Goombasa and Midori chose not to be here today. Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yes, you are their stand-in. So, tags, do we believe they're accurate? I'm going to start with Sunny, since it's your choice.
Yes. Though I will say, crossover, as much as it certainly is one, it's not a lot of one, in my opinion.
Oh, controversial. Cygnus, what do you think?
complete agreement. Basically, if you've read the title, you know what you're in for, and the tags support that. So I agree with Honey about the Sunny. You keep doing this to me.
Might as well be you. I'm just doing it to fuck you, you know.
I know, and you did this on Friday as well. Definitely the crossover point. We can get to that, but I would say that is to the story's benefit.
Gooty?
Echoing the other two, very much so. The crossover thing, in terms of story, it doesn't cross over with the universe, and that's thereabouts where I plant my flag on that matter. But yes, otherwise.
Ilya?
Well, it's gory, dark, and horrible, I'll say that. Sad, probably. I have no idea whether it's a crossover. I've never played the games. I would possibly add mystery, because most of it was to me. It may not have been to everyone else.
No, I agree with that, actually, without going into spoilers. I do think there's a big mystery. And Lost, what do you think about the tags?
I actually agree with everybody for the most part, especially the mystery aspect of it, considering certain elements that are borrowed from the games. But yeah, the crossover is probably the biggest issue I have with the tags, because I wish there was a tag like influence, maybe not crossover specifically, because crossover implies that you're going to have like key elements from that series in it, and that's definitely not the case with this story. Like, or at least like key figures or things like that. Like things that you would know from the game series. I hope that made sense.
Like homage, even?
Yeah.
Yes, like homage.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, that's a better tag. I like that one. Good job, Goody.
Woo! Goody gets a gold star. Fucker. Alright. So, a summary of the story. Sunny, this is your job. Can you give us a spoiler-free elaboration on the story?
Yeah, so bit of backstory for anyone who doesn't know, because Ilya, I know you haven't played the games. This is based on the video game series Silent Hill, which has a unified story, but the three games are definitely distinct. The main parts that it borrows from are the fact that Silent Hill is a town filled with like supernatural elements and horrible monsters, and it's filled with fog, and the game specifically, it's filled with this unnatural winter where it's always snowing. But in the the Silent Ponyville fic, it really just happens that Pinkie goes to Twilight for help with these nightmares that she's having. Twilight casts a spell, as was a common trope in early fics, but this was actually one of the earliest fics in fandom, so I guess it wasn't much of a trope back then. So Twilight casts this spell, and it sends Pinkie into this Silent Hill version of Ponyville, where it's filled with fog and these whole creatures, and there's puzzles everywhere, borrowing very much from the game series, and Pinkie has to figure out why she's been sent here, why she keeps remembering things that she didn't remember before, and how this connects to the nightmares she's been having.
Thank you. So this, as you said, this story is one of the earliest that we've looked at. And for that reason, it can seem a bit tropey and a bit cliche, but that's because it's one of the first to do these things. So when we talk about elements of it as we go on, please remember this was like the progenitor for a lot of things that people then absolutely ran with. But its biggest influence is cupcakes. So if you know anything about the story of cupcakes, you know like the level of gore the tag is referring to. Does anybody want to briefly explain what the heck cupcakes is? Because there are people who have come into the fandom fairly recently who don't always know, which is a very strange concept, I know, since I know at least 2 people in here who came into the fandom via cupcakes. But who would like to briefly tell us what that was about?
I could take that one too.
Okie dokie, Sunny.
So Cupcakes was not only like one of, if not the first horror MLP fic in the fandom, but it was also like potentially one of the first fics ever written for the fandom, because the earliest fic that we have recorded is like January of 2011, which is when Cupcakes was known to have come out. So it was like the fic in fandom at the time. And it's...
If I could interject real quick,
Yeah.
I'm almost positive it came out after Party of One. That's how far back.
It was before.
It was before.
Yeah, it was before. So it precursors like it is probably one of the first Grimdarks to come out into the fandom.
Yeah, because it was autumn 2010 the show itself premiered. So January 2011 was like a matter of months after the whole show had started.
Mm-hmm. So it takes place before Party of One, before it's explored in canon that Pinkie could have this depressed alter ego that might be a little off her rocker. So it follows Rainbow Dash at first, but at the end, it switches to Pinkie Pie's POV. And am I allowed to spoil it? Are we ready for
Yeah, because we're not reviewing Cupcakes, so spoil the hell out of that one.
for me to spoil Cupcakes? Spoiler alert: Rainbow Dash is invited to the sugar cube corner because Pinkie Pie wants to bake cupcakes with her. And by baking cupcakes with her, she means literally with Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash gets knocked out, wakes up in Sugar Cube Corner's basement. Pinkie Pie tortures her and kills her and harvests her organs for cupcakes.
It's not just me!
Fuck off. It was me first this time. Harvests her organs for cupcakes, and it's implied that all of Ponyville has been eating these cupcakes made of ponies. And it was particularly influential because not only had there not really been an MLP-based horror fic, but it predicted Pinkie Pie having that kind of darker alter ego.
Pinkamina,
Yeah.
as she came to be known. So it's important to know this fic because it shows up quite prominently in Silent Ponyville, especially in one of the alternate endings, which Sunny made us read, and I didn't know the existence of, so thanks about that, Sunny.
It was all worth it for the most recent one.
Right, so we are going into spoiler territory now. If you are interested, then both Cygnus and Gooty have readings of it on their channels, so go and sample that to your delight as much as you can. The delight of Silent Ponyville and carving up small cute ponies. We're spoiling the fuck out of it now. So, Sunny, spoilery version of Silent Ponyville, what is the answer to the mystery?
So, spoiler alert, the original Silent Hill series deals very much with, like, repressed trauma and discovering these horrible secrets. In the first game, it's more to do with the town and other people, but in Silent Hill 2 in particular, the protagonist discovers that he well, I won't spoil Silent Hill 2, but he discovers something big, and this very much borrows from that. So it's kind of mostly a mix of the first two games. Pinkie discovers that she's been repressing memories about having a third sister. So in this fic, it's not canon, but her sister is Octavia. I'm sure Goody is tired of getting comments about that. So yes,
Make it stop.
non-canon.
If you had to pause the podcast to go listen to the story, don't ask.
Yeah.
Just don't fucking do it.
That was a big thing back then. There's quite a lot of old stories where people thought that Octavia was Pinkie's sister because of that flashback and the Grand Galloping Gala. It was a big thing in early fandom that Octavia was one of Pinkie's sisters.
I kind of like it.
And I kind of love it, yeah.
Yeah.
I do kind of love the idea that Pinkie wasn't the only one who fucked off the rock farm.
Fuck that farm.
And I've got to admit, I prefer the idea of Octavia being her sister to just having Fluttershy 2.0.
Yeah. So in
Anyway,
the fic, Octavia is Pinkie's sister, and he knows about her. But after meeting her at the gala, it turns out that was what was inciting her to think more about her time on the rock farm, and the nightmares were being caused by her remembering repressed memories about her other sister, Bellamina, who, long story short, got horribly murdered in front of Pinkie after Pinkie led her into the woods with this cult who, cupcake style, was cutting up and eating fillies and tortured and murdered.
He was a child predator.
Tortured, murdered, who knows what else, Bellamina right in front of Pinkie, and then planned to do the same to Pinkie, but the cops intervened at the last second. So Pinkie is discovering this throughout the fic in different metaphors and outright memories, and it is kind of a clever twist on Cupcakes that the Cupcakes version of Pinkie that shows up in the story, because she does show up as a prominent figure, is a representation of Pinkie's survivor's guilt for fuck off. Just let me be tongue-tied. For whatever, surviving, you get it.
Let's make a fuck off counter from Sunny.
Bing! That's 2 for Sunny. Right, so yeah, it's one of those things that because it did everything first, it did everything the most interesting way it could have been done at the time. But some of the very early fandom concepts, like Octavia being her sister, like Bellamina being the younger sister's name, like Cupcakes being such a prominent influence, all of it is because season 1 fandom, which is really disturbing to think that was like 10 years ago. 9 years ago.
Yeah,
9
thanks
years
for
ago. Yeah. When you think
Thank
back,
you.
you think,
Thank you for making me feel old right now.
Well, here's another thing to make you feel old. I was talking to one of the little VAs the other day, and I realized that she was like 5 when Cupcakes came out.
No.
Why are you like this?
And
I can help you all with that.
Yeah, we cannot talk. No one in here gets to hold that card.
Ilya definitely is king of that. So we're going to go on to characterization to begin with. Specifically, do we feel it's accurate for Pinkie Pie, because she is very much the main character, but to a lesser extent Twilight and Rainbow Dash in what is called like the true ending. I'm going to hand this off to Goody for a second, because you adapted one of the endings, which is sort of the true ending. But do you want to explain what that means?
The true ending, and you mean in effect of how it's the as in the how in effect it's the canon one.
Yeah, because it's actually like the second or third one that's included, but it's actually the proper one, as I understand it.
Yeah. So to kind of give a little backstory on that, in the games of Silent Hill, Konami is a real big fan of putting in bonus extra endings. Sometimes they're a lot more bad endings. Like Silent Hill 2 has like a bad ending, a neutral ending, and then the quote unquote best ending. 3 has several as well. In Silent and the second game also has a silly ending. I don't want to spoil any of them, naturally. But the thing about the ending that I adapted was because it was because it's those events that lead into the Silent Ponyville universe's adaptation of the second story, which predominantly features Fluttershy, and I'm not sure if this is a good point to mention, but there are a couple of in between stories that kind of tie the things together. So there's a fic between Silent Ponyville 1 and 2 it's a one-shot fic of
I would say Too Shy for a Rainbow, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that one. That canonical ending actually leads into Silent Ponyville 2, which I released at a point in time where Lost was actually just about to release her SP2 Redux, which of
Silent Ponyville 2.
Correct. And Pinkie is featured in that, and she had gone through the exact same core elements of the story, and then in the epilogue of Silent Ponyville 1, understanding forgiveness and forgiving herself, knowing that her family still loves and accepts her.
Yeah, from that survivor guilt that they don't hold it against her, that she effectively got her sister killed by trusting a stranger.
Yes, and that leads her into aiding Fluttershy alongside Rainbow Dash in Silent Ponyville 2 once that comes along, because Fluttershy eventually suffers the same issues. So Pinkie's got a head up on things.
So because of that, even though if you go to the Silent Ponyville fanfiction page, even though the ending called The Truth doesn't happen immediately, like if you read this chronologically, it's one of the secondary endings. I'm just having a look at the page now.
Number 5.
It's the 5th ending, but it is the actual canonical ending that segues into the sequels.
I was gonna say that actually kind of fits the structure of how the game's played. In the game, obviously you would have the game over ending because you obviously get killed when you're playing the game. The second ending is usually in Silent Hill 2, the second ending that you unlock is usually the worst ending, which is the in water ending, because you're usually not taking care of your character. The twist ending was I was talking to Sunny earlier before we were recording. The twist ending, it's revealed that Pinkie is actually Bellamina, and that I feel like is a nod to the one of the main characters in Silent Hill is Alyssa, who is later reincarnated as the character from the third game, Heather. But I feel like that's a nod to that. The UFO ending is more of a joke ending, and all of those usually kind of go in order, and then usually you get the actual true ending because it's the hardest to get because you have to do a lot of things to unlock it. So I understand why it's the 5th. The 6th ending, I think that's the 4th wall break.
Yeah.
If I'm not
UFO.
mistaken.
It's the dog
and
ending.
then the 7th ending, which was added in August of 2015, is, in my opinion and Sunny's opinion, the best fucking ending ever, because it is the most savage of all, because it just completely rips on Konami and its bullshit. But no, that makes sense why it would be the 5th. Like that the main ending would be the last one.
Okay, see, I wouldn't have known that, having not played the game itself. But that is interesting to know. So yeah, if you go to the fanfiction page and read this, apparently it's there's a lot more thought put into it than I would have expected, because being ignorant of games. Sunny?
Yeah, as much as this doesn't borrow main elements from Silent Hill, it does definitely reference little character moments a lot. So it's very clear that the author does have a really good understanding of the original game series. It's just that they didn't implement a lot of that original lore into the meat of the story itself.
You mean unlike Fallout, where we had to get every single thing into the story somehow,
we'll
somewhere?
Get to that bitch someday, don't you worry.
No, we won't. No, we absolutely won't. We're not reading Fallout Equestria for this podcast.
But
Sunny and I can handle a couple of them, I think. We'll just burn it all to the ground.
I would...
Right, if you guys just want to get in the server and just rip that space, is fine. But I am not moderating
Happily.
that. You just vent to your heart's content.
A moderator could not contain our rage, to be honest.
Cygnus, you have to get in there too.
Cygnus?
Oh, you know it.
Cygnus, do you have something to say then?
With regards to the characterization?
Yes.
Sure. No, again, pretty much in line with what everyone has said. Twilight's a plot device, as she tends to be in early fandom, and Rainbow was there to be shipped. But Pinkie, actually, I think, was carried off pretty well, honestly, in terms of, what had been shown of her up to that point. And, bearing in mind the party of one interpretation of her that we have with the whole, the straight hair gets referenced as a major character moment. And I honestly think that she is probably the most believable aspect of the story in that respect, in terms of tying this to the actual canon. Yeah.
Gooty, what do you think about Pinkie's characterization as well as Twilight and Rainbow Dashes?
Well, I'm kind of with Cygnus on the Twilight plot device, and that goes for any of the fanfic genres, to be honest. When it comes to Pinkie's characterization, I was, and again, this is going off of the only seen season 1 thing, because that's about when it came out, party of 1, only 1 season. It was really nice to see an interpretation of Pinkie that was so much more than one could have expected. Because, with party 1, we saw a side of Pinkie that was like, she was, for the first time in the season, she was like, irrevocably sad, and no one had really even considered what that true, honest, darkness in her spirit could be. And we had, and I think it was a really good interpretation. And to preface this point as well, Silent Ponyville was the fic that got me into the fandom, like more or less completely. Like for a while, I was watching the show. I'm like, oh, this is a pretty cool show, but reading the fic one night at the radio station at one of my old jobs, that sold me, because I've always been a Silent Hill fan, and being able to combine that with seeing a parallel like that in superimposed into Pinkie's character was a really nice thing to explore, I think.
I agree. There's a certain amount of introspective depth, that even doesn't really get shown in the show, to slightly revise my opinion. Seeing her actually have more thought processes than just
party.
Exactly. I was going to say, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this politely. Adrenal responses. Yeah. Endocrine.
She's the friend who I immediately thought of the friend who's like always smiling and always chipper, but they never ever show the inside of like what pain they're really feeling.
Sure. And what you need for something like that is the situation for it to come out, the appropriate moment when it actually shows itself. And in all honesty, this, while perhaps a bit extreme for the source material, certainly could offer that kind of environment.
It was a catalyst.
Yes.
Ilya, what did you think about the characterization?
I thought they were fairly accurate for Pinkie Pie. It not just, I was basing it on everything I've seen since then. I suppose we need to restrict it to what we'd seen up until that point. But Pinkie, to use a simile, was a bit like a spring in the first few episodes. You do anything to her and she'd bounce back. And then we began to see that she didn't have that exact temper. She was more like a piece of metal that once bent could remain bent. So I liked seeing all the different ways the metal could be bent that they used in this story. It was fun watching that. And I think that it went along very well with Pinkie and what you would expect her to do in certain situations. The other characters were probably pretty accurate, but they were pretty shallow. There wasn't much in them. It's like you were just seeing the surface of them. So I don't know if there was any depth to them at all, really. But yeah, relatively accurate, yes.
I thought it was quite interesting, Rainbow's inclusion in the true ending. That her characterization, while shallow, was still so accurate for that moment. And it was interesting that of all the characters in early fandom, she was still one that when people thought about, okay, who would be Pinkie's best friend, it's going to be Rainbow.
Well, yeah, and Pinkie went back specifically, the only character she went back to in the ending to make up with. I thought that was very important.
Yeah, when she was going to say goodbye, that was who she went out of her way to reminisce with and say goodbye to. It was interesting that it wasn't Twilight, considering Twilight had helped her come to these revelations, that it was Rainbow she felt most comfortable doing that decompression with. Lost, what do you think?
I think I'm probably the only one who kind of disagrees about Rainbow's characterization, but not necessarily like it's her dialogue. I have probably the biggest gripe with her dialogue because I voiced Rainbow for Goody's production. And I remember the amount of rage I had over certain phrases or certain like things she was saying that I'm like, this is not shit Rainbow would say.
It's true. In some points when we were on calls or whatever, I would say, hey, you can rearrange the phrasing of this if you want, as long as it gets the point across.
Yeah, like Rainbow character wise is there, but her dialogue as a character is just like it, and I get it too. It's early fandom. Like she's not as fleshed out as she is like obviously like in later seasons, but it was, I think Gal Pal. I think that was the one fucking thing that Rainbow said that stuck out.
Gal Pal.
It was Gal Pal, and I remember thinking like, this is not something Rainbow would say. What the fuck is this shit?
That's something that Pinkie would say, her gal pal.
Yeah, no, Rainbow says it in the story, in the true ending.
Right,
And
okay.
there was so much for that. It wasn't even funny. But Twilight is in character, like everyone was saying, the idea that she's the plot device or she's pushing forward the plot, whatever. Pinkie, though, the one thing I love about Sam's writing is that whenever it comes to the idea of taking a concept that's already pre-existing, either fandom or something that hasn't been explored, Sam comes up with like the most brilliant way to convey it within the writing. The way that it's explained and like, okay, so why is Pinkie the way she is with the cupcakes aspect? And the fact that she has survivor's guilt. It's like, that's fucking brilliant. It's brilliant. Like, I at least think I love that. That's like probably one of my favorite things, is that if you can take something and then explain it in a much more logical and coherent way than just, oh, she's just a killer who's just doing it because shiggles. And I love that. I love reading stories that take those kinds of aspects and just flush them out.
No, you are absolutely not alone there. I felt the same way, I guess, especially on rereading it this last time. Tying those plot threads together was brilliant, and it's probably one of the better parts of the story.
Sunny, do you have anything to add?
So I don't think Rainbow Dash was terribly out of character. I mean, like, I can understand the dialogue nitpicks. It does sound weird, and I'm sure definitely if you're trying to mimic her voice to like hear her say gal pals, but I can kind of believe with Equestria Girl's Rainbow Dash that she might say that. So if we're talking like a younger, I don't know, girlier version of Rainbow Dash, I could say, yeah. So like season 1 Rainbow Dash very much reminds me of Equestria Girls Rainbow Dash. So having watched a lot of Equestria Girls and then rewatched season 1, from that characterization, I can understand someone having, dialogue that might seem out of character now like that. And I think we did hit on that point. So Rainbow Dash, not terribly out of character for me, but also not in the story long enough for me to nitpick her. Twilight was just a device, like everyone else said. She was just kind of there. It was perfectly serviceable. She didn't do anything too out of character. I think Pinkie Pie is actually really out of character in this one. I think she's way too calm and broken down in a way I wouldn't think she would in canon, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think she needed to be calmer and a little more rational and less go all the time, bouncy reacty. Because I know she's supposed to be like, flat-haired Pinkie Pie where she's a little bit sadder, but even when she had her flat hair, she did still have that zany reactive side. She was just angry instead of excited. So I do think it's actually very out of character, but I think that makes it better.
I'd say that's fair, but have we ever really, or had we ever really at that point, seen her reacting to fear? Because that was what I took away from her characterization in the story.
The dragon episode.
episode.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that was supposed to be after the the grandparent telling her to laugh at things, right? Or am I getting this backwards? It's been so long since I've seen the early episodes.
But in terms of her reacting to fear, like, it is established that she would react a certain way. So I think her reactions are not necessarily always out of character, to be fair. I can totally see her calming down and having a more nuanced reaction to certain things. Like Gummy's death, that for sure, that scene was on point for me. But there are certain spots where I wish they took more advantage of the fact that it's Pinkie Pie in the story and just add added a little bit more brevity. Not so much that you take away from the tone, but enough to be like, oh yeah, it's still her, you know? Even in her worst moments, I like to think that she has some capacity for humor.
Oh, go on, Ilya.
I was just going to say atmosphere has something to do with it. In the first place, I'm not sure that she'd come out of a traumatic dream as traumatized as everyone else. She seems to, oh, that was fun. I'll try that again when I go into a dream, you know, or something like that. I'm not certain that a dream would traumatize her as much as it did. And the other thing is, in the first episode of the series, when she's dancing around in the woods at the scary face trees, she's in a regular Ponyville. She's in a regular Equestria. But she, in the story, she's taken to an Equestria that she doesn't recognize. And so the reactions to fear would be different because there's nothing to ground her in there. She's, you know, totally groundless.
Well, there is like environmental depression that one's surroundings can affect one's mood with prolonged exposure to it. So I imagine if you see a literal place that you love, your salvation, the thing that has always made you happy, literally rotting around you, it might make you a little more dour.
See, that's what I was thinking too. Especially because, like, what is it? The balloon is destroyed, and like all of these aspects of what Pinkie identifies as herself within her core are being tainted within the realm of Silent Ponyville. And it's like, when you're especially consider it, is it ever specified in the story how long she's been having the nightmares?
2 weeks.
Okay, 2 weeks. And I've had bouts of horrible nightmares like for long periods of time, and I know what that does. Like, it just beats down on you. So for her to be that calm and broken within the context of Silent Ponyville, I can believe that, like in that sense at least. I do think though maybe there could have been like snark humor at certain points, but it's Pinkie though. Like, I don't know. Like, I at least I find her in character.
You're so right on about the balloon metaphor. That one was really striking because Pinkie has this ability to see things from a perspective that no one else can. And she has this balloon that enables her to go above Ponyville that will show her this perspective that she needs, but it's gone because it's full of holes. So she no longer has a perspective. That was really good.
I should clarify,
Sunny?
maybe I don't necessarily mean this is out of characters and like, oh, I can't believe she would react that way. I more mean that it's like inherently character breaking. I think it's aware that Pinkie isn't acting exactly like she would in the show, and it uses that to help create that atmosphere that Ilya was talking about. Like, the atmosphere of Silent Hill, and by extension Ponyville, is inherently this quiet, fog-filled place with these things lurking in the dark. So to have loud, bouncy Pinkie, even a depressed Pinkie, be so herself, especially at that point in canon, would have probably broken the tone more than the author would want to go for. So I absolutely buy that this is how someone would react to 2 weeks worth of horrible lucid nightmares. Because I have horrible lucid nightmares too. I totally understand how that affects a person. But I can think of how I would maybe have done some things differently, and I think that's affecting my view of Pinkie Pie's characterization. So like I said, not bad, and certainly serves the story's purpose, but if I'm asked if I think that it's in character, not necessarily.
Sunny, I'm going to agree with you and disagree with you on two separate points here. One, reading back through it, you know, I think the characterization itself works well for exactly the reason that you point out, because it's what's needed for her to work in the context of this story. And specifically for, I don't know, what should we call her? Prime Pie, Real Pie, Normal Pinkie?
Pinkie is prime.
Pinkie is prime. See, there you go. For her to work as the protagonist of the story, and for the story that Sam is trying to tell, yes. Where I think it does fall down, and where I think you may be having some of the problem, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is the dialogue.
Yes.
It's the it's the whole the expository,
Yes.
effective, right. Oh, this is a key. Wow, I feel so bad about Gummy's death. Boo-hoo. Things
I
like
need that
right.
boo-hoo to be my ringtone. Boo-hoo.
Yeah. Every time we get a text, woohoo.
So things like that, I can definitely see taking you out of the story, taking you out of the established characterization, taking you out of Pinkie
I
Pie's
did
headspace.
occasionally see the author
Absolutely.
shoving their hand up Pinkie's ass to puppet out some exposition, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When it could have just as easily been told in exposition by itself without dialogue. And honestly, I think a quiet Pinkie Pie would have actually served this really well. Maybe not silent, but one that
Silent Ponyville, though.
see, there you go. But one that isn't, running around screaming her head off at every zombie that she sees. One that, to turn it into another video game metaphor, more of a Gordon Freeman,
Yeah.
right? Who just kind of, stoically runs into all of these.
Oh fuck it, Paranoia or something. Like, what's the name of the game he's from?
Half-Life.
Right.
Yeah,
I was
you're
I
close.
was trying
though.
to think of. Isn't there one? I don't play games, okay? Isn't there a survival horror where people are stuck in an asylum and these things with big metal rings around their neck keep
Amnesia.
I know this is a real
Oh
thing.
no, I know which one. Yep,
You're
Amnesia,
thinking
there we
it's
go.
Amnesia.
I wanted to call it asylum.
There is a
and I
pony
knew
version of that
wasn't right.
there is.
I know.
And actually, the
An
game was pretty
attempt was
good.
made to participate in this conversation.
But no, I do take your point, and Daniel is actually probably another good point of reference for this, because he does occasionally have this little moment of horror when he sees one of these flappy-jawed horrors running around, but he's not much of a speaker, and there's no real need to speak when you are on your own, when you are faced with this horrible situation, and when you are just trying to survive. Now, one thing I didn't understand, and maybe this is better put someplace later in the discussion, is how aware Pinkimus Prime, how aware she was of being in the dream once she was in the dream. Because she wakes up in the Ponyville that she's in after Twilight puts her under, and she's just like, oh, this is so strange. I have no idea how I could have gotten here. Boo-hoo. Yeah. So I suppose that's something to consider as well. And then the other point I was going to make was, Suni, what did you think of fake pie, of cupcakes pie, as a representation of Pinkie Pie up to that
Ooh.
point? Because I thought that part was stellar.
I did like all of the scenes with Cupcakes Pinkie, but knowing a little bit of backstory about why the fic was written, I can't help but feel that maybe their confrontation was a little on the nose. This is a point later, but for anyone who doesn't know,
Yep.
Sam Rose did
Here,
clarify that one of the reasons, in fact, one of the major reasons they wrote Silent Ponyville was to prove that horror fics could be better than cupcakes. So I can't help but look back on all of the scenes where Pinkie is literally fighting Cupcakes Pinkie Pie and be like, oh, I see. Yeah, I see you. I know what that's a metaphor for.
Well, and that's good to know, because I
Ooh.
actually had not heard that. So that may recontextualize it a bit for me. But interesting. I'm to be gentle here, I'm not sure that was carried out to perhaps the fullest extent that the author intended, but
Yeah.
okay.
I think it was one of those, if you knew what to look for, it became really obvious. Like one of those hidden picture paintings where when you unfocus your eyes a little bit, you're like, oh, there it is.
I can't tell if I think that it's clever or if I kind of dislike it, because in Silent Hill 3, it is a theme, and Lost pointed this out earlier. I hadn't remembered this, but it was a factor when I originally read the story, that in Silent Hill 3, the main character fights another version of themselves that's like dark and corrupted. So I very much saw Cupcakes Pinkie as being an homage to that. On top of being an homage to the purpose of the fic, that's either amazingly good writing or so on the nose that I kind of don't like it.
I always took it as if it was an homage to Silent Hill 3. That's how I've always seen it. Now, if it's also dual purposing as a haha,
Gotcha, bitch.
I'm okay. It's a gotcha, bitch, and I'm actually okay with that because I'm not a big fan of cupcakes.
Considering it was your first fucking reading.
Right. Well, okay. Let's be realistic here. We know that I do stories that I'm not necessarily happy with. Rainbow Factory being one of them. But I get it, because it's like I've seen stories where it's like, especially like Cupcakes is blatantly, oh man, let's up the ante with the car. Oh man, let's do this with Pinkie, because that's totally okay. And to take it like within this context and to actually like kind of like a haha, I'm okay with that. Like, I guess maybe because it's me and I'm petty, I don't know. But I'm all right with that. But I've always seen it more as an homage to Silent Hill 3. Like, it's the way that they interact, and especially because of what happens in Silent Hill 3, I've always seen it. Especially when you look at the third ending too, and how Pinkie's Bellamina and all that other, like, there's so many little nods to all the other games within the context of it all. So,
well, and this leaves me with a question, and I'm going to require some clarification on this because I know it's going to come up again. Wasn't there some sort of post hoc clarification that Cupcakes itself was supposed to be ironic?
yes.
Because it was around the time that Saw was still super duper popular, and gore porn horror was a big thing with all the copycats of Saw. So Cupcakes was like, well, what if Saw meant ponies?
The author of Cupcakes has expressed that they not only didn't expect it to blow up the way that it did, but are not sure how they feel about it being as popular as it is.
Which I can understand.
Sweeney Todd was having a big revival about that time, too.
True, yeah. That was, gosh, the Sweeney Todd film had come out just a few years before, hadn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like two-ish years. Yeah, so it was this fated nexus of various different things. Like, you couldn't have planned for Cupcakes to have this hotbed of interest that it was going to have, especially if it was meant to be a shitpost and you're like, oh shit, people are taking this seriously. That is
I can only imagine what that must have felt like. Ah, look at this. Wait, what, you like it?
like, I've written a shitpost. It's the producers.
Here, I think that well, first I feel like a stoop now because I used Pyramid Head music during the Pinkie versus Pinkie fight, and whoopsie doodles. But I really definitely agree that it was. I kind of saw it as a sort of homage to Cupcakes in some ways, but kind of in the sense that where he's almost like, where the author was like, you know what, I see you, but catch this dance move. And you know, he used material that was there that, like, you know, it had blown up in such a way that you said that it did, and he was like, you know what, people will get this reference, and I'm going to just spice up my story with a little blend of this. And you know, I think he made it work. I think he made it work in the context, all things considered. And, you know, being at 2000, it was 2011, I'm pretty sure.
It was.
So,
yes.
yeah. So I think he made it work pretty well in the context of everything.
Well, this does segue quite nicely into our next point, which was impressions of the prose style. How does this story read? Is it trying to achieve any particular tone? Does it? How well does it achieve this? Someone was tapping. Who was that?
And me.
Oh,
Quick,
Suni. Okay.
yeah, just a quick point before we start on this. The author is aware that it's rough. So I know there's probably going to be a lot of points about the prose that are less favorable to the grammar. They've gone back. They're like, I cringe when I read it. Yes, I know it's not very well formatted. So they are totally aware of that. They're open. Yeah.
It's 9 years old. I think if any of us look back to stuff we wrote 9 years ago, we'd think, ooh.
Yeah, they're totally open to criticism as long as it's constructive and not just, you know, blind hate. And they are very much aware. They are very much aware that it has not aged especially well.
Well, when you compare it to, I mean, I know that they discontinued Silent Ponyville 4 in January of this year, which I didn't realize until fairly recently. But when you look at the writing style of Silent Ponyville 4, it had matured a lot. So that's not to say that the writing style from Silent Ponyville 1 is indicative of where Sam Rose ended up.
Frankly, the writing at the end of the story, I don't remember where in the several high-profile rewrites this fell, but the writing at the end of the story is substantially better than the writing at the beginning. Even just from a stag perspective.
What was that phrase, Lost, that kept happening over and over?
that you can love something but know that it's very, very flawed. Is that the phrase?
I meant the one that you went through and counted how many there were in the story.
Oh, once again! Or once more! Once more! Once more!
It was something like 200, wasn't it?
Yes, in the original Silent Ponyville 2, I went through and counted all of the times that once more comes up, and it's about 200 plus times within the...
And then not one of them would the Sith rule the galaxy.
Nope. Nope.
Right, so, impressions of prose style. Cygnus, do you want to go first on this?
Sure. As I said, obviously a great deal of effort went into revising this. I seem to recall from my very early reading that I had to do a lot of restructuring so that I had enough breath to get every sentence out. Because there were a lot of commas where there should have been full stops. Other than that, I absolutely cannot go back and listen to that, so I can't really discuss the story as it was. As it is, the first couple of chapters, I would say... Let's see, what's the charitable phrasing here? Amateurish but earnest?
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
Good heart to it.
Yeah, sure. And it did. It certainly was certainly interested in carrying the story across. It's just the manner in which it chose to go about doing it. It wasn't as though, it's all rush and no desire to actually tell the story and sloppiness. It really more felt like
It's not like my roommate is a vampire.
Yeah, very much more. I'm trying to tell the story in exactly the way that it's coming out of my head, and far less. Oh, let me just get it over with. Which is certainly something that we've all seen from people and authors and stories before.
Game of Thrones. Okay, how about tone? What do you think of the tone of this story?
Again, coming at this from the Silent Hill perspective, it's trying to ape the tone without fully aping the story. And there are parts of it that it carries off better and parts that it doesn't carry off as well. Again, I honestly think that the best part of this entire thing, really, is the internal struggle between the survivor's guilt, self-hating Cupcakes Pinkie, and the Pinkimus Prime, which, yes, I am going to keep using now, even though you said it in jest. Honestly, in terms of carrying through Silent Hill's various themes, and I'm sure you saw this in the Discord chat earlier, but my interpretation has always been that it's supposed to be about healing and about atonement and about coming to terms with the things that you have done in your past, your guilt, your perceived guilt, and what needs to be done to come back from each of those. And in terms of carrying those off, yeah, I think it was great. I think that scene especially was perfect. I think the flashbacks post-rewrite were great for carrying that through. In terms of the rest of it, the horror, the Silent Hill physicality, the location itself, I'm not sure that any of that was really necessary, per se. And maybe we can get to that point when we talk about this as a crossover. But really, truly, and honestly, I think that tying this down to Silent Hill is actually to the story's detriment. That the story of the redemption, the memories, all of that could have been carried through perfectly well without the game aspects. But, that's just me, and I'm monopolizing time again, so I'm going to shut up now.
Don't be silly. Gooty, what do you think?
Oh, man, I have to follow that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Cygnus touched on a lot of good points that I agree with. In terms of the prose, yeah, I'm... As the other person here who did a full narration of the story, yeah, I too had to do a lot of restructuring of the dialogue because they're just me as how it was kind of brought through, the field of broadcasting. There are certain things that we have to certain ways that we have to phrase our our verbiage when it comes to like, you know, talking and stuff, and there's just some like words that just in my head they just do not go together. Like one after one after another or whatever when you're trying to like read like prose. So as I verbal barf this entire point I'm trying to make.
So like plosives and lots of S noises all following after each other makes
Yeah,
it difficult to physically say.
And having like full stops in the written word and such. But so I had to do a lot of restructuring when I was doing the narration, but I was still getting the point. Relatively speaking, I was still getting the points across that I needed to. But overall, in terms of the tonality, I honestly didn't mind it. Because I didn't mind it in the slightest, like reading it without speaking it. And that's because when I'm playing whenever I was playing a Silent Hill game, it didn't really stray far from, what kind of goes on in my head. You're going through like isolation and your brain is going like a million miles a minute trying to think, what's around the corner? What's in here? Is there something in the fog? Is this playing tricks on me? Am I playing tricks on me? In the prose, there's a lot of speculation that, something could be there, something is likely there, but then, nothing could happen from it. It's just Pinkie's brain maybe playing tricks on her. There's no, like in some points you almost think of it as Chekhov's gun. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah, Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's gun.
When you present a gun in the first act, it better have been fired by the third act.
Yeah, and it's more that some of the prose is speculatory, but that's because when I'm playing the game, that's kind of how my mind kind of works, just trying to go 1,000 miles a minute, just figuring out what's happening next. Am I being followed? Is there something in the fog, etc.? So I think while it was the first go in the series of the prose, because of those factors, I didn't mind it.
Ilya, what did you think about the prose style?
Well, I want to go right now to this story read, actually. I kept asking myself when I was reading this, I wonder how old this author is. Because it seemed like a fellow who had read a lot and had played a number of video games, but it wasn't someone who'd had a lot of interaction with other people in a lot of meaningful ways. Because there was like just huge, he was extremely good at describing atmosphere, and he was very good at describing battle scenes, but he sucked at character interaction. I read the first chapter, then I got into the second one, and then there were like 2 or 3 chapters in a row that nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. He just walked along and he saw scary things, and he'd get a key. Oh, I wonder what this. She'd get a key. I wonder what this is for. And then, oh, a lock. I bet that key goes in here. It's like he's playing a video game. I didn't care anything about that. And then there was this point where it was revealed that there was a picture. But wait a minute, there's only 4 here. There should be 5. Well, right then I knew that she'd had a sister that had died and that she was probably the cause of it. I mean, it was immediately apparent to me. So that sort of ruined the end of the thing. And so when it got to the end, and I see the ending 5 as the true end, and she had this fantastic point here where she could have interacted with Octavia. I wanted to hear her confess to Octavia. I wanted to hear Octavia break down and cry and then forgive her. But it was just glossed over. It was like, and then she told her, and that was kind of it. And I was just extremely disappointed that we didn't get to see the complex characterizations, the interactions between characters that I wanted from the story. So for that reason, I just assumed that, well, I think the author did pretty good with his limited resources because he was probably pretty young and didn't have a lot of experience interacting with people on a meaningful level. So I don't want to belittle the story because I think the author is extremely good at describing things, but not particularly good with interacting. I don't know anything about the video game itself. I did find myself in the first few minutes thinking, this is a video game, and I didn't really know anything about Silent Hill, so I didn't have anything to compare it to, but without knowing anything about the game, it certainly was kind of a slog. I believe it would have been really good if he'd written the first chapter, just a tiny bit of the second, gone right into the fifth with rewrites all the way, and then go into the fifth ending and rewritten some of the characterizations. It could have been a wonderful story. As it was tough to get through for me.
Lost, what do you think?
So Prose. This is probably my biggest gripe in the whole thing. And like Suni said earlier, Sam Rose is aware of how rough it is. So I won't rip into it too bad. But for me personally, it is probably the weakest of all of the aspects. It reminds me of like a video game that I really, really like, Final Fantasy 13. I know the gameplay is rough. I know that it drags in areas, but the story is compelling enough for me to want to continue. And that's how I feel about it. Like tonality wise, I feel like it does achieve it because it's under the guise of the games. I've played all of the games. So for me, especially when I first heard this reading back, oh God, I think 2012. I don't remember who had done a reading of it, but I'd listened to somebody's reading of it, and I just fell in love with it because I can see I know for you, Ilya, it's a point of like, oh, she has the key. Well, duh. For me, I'm like, oh, she's got a key. Okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
What is this gonna do? Because of the riddles and the puzzles and all the stupid things that are in the games, like I'm okay with that. But on the flip side of it, though, I completely agree with you, Ilya, on the sense of the character interactions at the end and the true ending. That's why, and this is my own personal, Silent Ponyville 2 is the better one because it completely drives home the character interactions at that point. The characters are a lot more developed, and the way that they interact with each other is so much more compelling compared to the first. But I think that's my biggest gripe is just the prose and the way that certain things just feel very lackluster at the end because you're just like, wait, I wanted those tears, damn it. Like, what the hell?
Exactly.
I want those feels, but you don't fucking get them in this story. And that's okay. I can still love it. Okay. Like it's mine. I love it. But, that's the reason why, like, when a lot of people, cause I know that is a gripe of a lot of people, where the idea that the ending feels lackluster because you don't get that resolution with Octavia and Pinkie. But in 2, you get that with the character. I won't spoil it, obviously, but with those characters at the end of 2, you get that kind of resolution. It's still shit, but you get those feels and everything.
But Lost, do you feel like they wrote the atmosphere beautifully like I do, or is that just my own impression?
No, I like the atmosphere in this story. And that's because of, I can see where they borrowed from the games. A lot of, like I said earlier, this is really an homage to the Silent Hill series. And that's why I love it so much. And the atmosphere and the tonality of certain aspects of the story are very well done. But for me personally, it pulls me out with the prose and the sentence structure. Sentence structure was probably one of the biggest issues I had with this story, because of how lackluster, I think is the correct word.
Yeah.
But Sam's aware of it, and Silent Ponyville 4, you can see how much Sam has grown as a writer. And considering this is probably Sam's first big piece, I get it. But yeah, it's one of those, like, I probably would have revisited it in a few years and polished it up. Like, I would have ripped it a new asshole.
You would have reduxed it.
Yes, I would have. Exactly. I would have reduxed it.
So, Suni, Any thoughts on this?
My response is going to be far more mild than you seem to think it will be. Thank you. I'm not gonna rip it a new asshole or anything.
I thought, mate, more like that. There's been a lot of stuff said, and you kind of were at the end of the queue.
No, I've been keeping track of all of it. So, I majorly agree with Lost about I loved the game mechanics, and we'll get a little bit more into this later, but I really do think they added to the story. I didn't find them an impediment at all. Sorry, my air conditioning kicked on and totally distracted me. I was like, what the fuck is that?
Last time it was your cat, this time it's your air
Dude, I'm on
conditioning.
the second floor. I was like, is a truck ramming into my wall? What the hell? I definitely agree with Lost that because I love the games and I really like the mechanics of finding key. Ooh, where does the key go? What does the key represent? You know, I love that aspect of the game, so I really liked seeing that in the. And I do feel this is very much for fans of the game fic. So as much as it's not required reading, I would disagree that the game aspects needed to be cut out to make it better. That would certainly make it a good fic, but I don't think it would make it better. As far as how it reads, atmosphere, I agree with everyone else. The atmosphere is pretty good. I think they achieved the tone they were going for. In terms of prose, besides what everyone else has said, the ellipses. Oh my god, the sheer amount of fucking ... every sentence. I thought it was goddamn Mars attacks ... Fucking hell, it was so much. It was really, really distracting how many ellipses there were. And I think this is something they fixed in their writing sense. So I don't think they rely so heavily on those, but it was hard to stomach, man. There's a lot, those. You really don't get how many ellipses and just basic grammar mistakes there are when you listen to a reading of it. Like, fucking props to everyone who did a reading of any of these fics, because the first one in particular, holy shit, the sheer amount of proofreading that would be needed to make that comprehensible. I know the author is aware, but damn, dude, you know? Damn.
I could have gone the rest of my life without remembering that Mars attacks existed.
My mom used to threaten to put a cutout of one of the aliens in my room if I acted up and say like ...
Oh my God.
in the middle of the night. I fucking hated that movie when I was a kid. Oh my god, I just remembered how much I fucking hated it. It was so scary. It was scary. Their fucking big ass brains, their eyes. I felt like they were, and I grew up in the middle of the country too. So like I'm out there in the middle of the country, fucking 10 p.m. at night, fucking dark goddamn cornfields everywhere, and I hear ... and I'm like, oh god, they're coming to get me. It's us. We're the ones who get abducted.
Oh,
You know,
you were the ones who were like the safest. They went for
No,
cities.
that's a rule thing, mate. Maybe for those ones in particular, but aliens and country folk, we don't mix.
It's so true, though. We cannot control what fucks us up as children. It's in any respect. You know, did you ever see the 1950s War of the Worlds?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that one.
Really?
Yeah, believe
the
it or
one
not.
where the aliens are killed by prayer?
That was the scariest bit.
The power of prayer is real.
I saw that in the 1950s. It was really scary back then.
Oh, I believe it.
That's-
No, but
wasn't it the radio version that came out first and had people like jumping out of their
The
homes and shit?
30s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah, the
30s.
George Orwell one in the 30s.
Orson Welles love.
Yeah, would be the right word, wouldn't it? Fuck off, fuck off, fuck off.
See,
am
I had to get it
I
in
know what
there.
I'm doing. Ah! Yeah, mine was The Thing. I was very silly, and I saw The Thing as a child.
Oh, yes.
When the head falls off the table, I'm like,
And I bet the dogs didn't do you any favors either.
no!
See, for me, it's Chucky.
Oh.
That was the movie that fucked me up as a kid, and I refused to have dolls at that point. I only played with action figures after that.
Yes! You fucking kid me.
And then Small Soldiers came out.
Oh yeah, and then Small Soldiers came out. Yeah, no,
The rude action figures.
I just remember being like 4 or 5 when that movie came out, and I was at my uncle's house, and my cousins were all watching it, but there I was out in the backyard by myself in the dirt because I couldn't be inside, and I peeked in the dirt. But I looked over into the window and I saw one of the scenes, and I just remember screaming bloody murder because nope.
Oh my god! You know the other thing that because you said right about 5 Lost. The other movie that really fucked me up that I still can't watch, and it has no business doing this to me. Flubber.
Oh
What?
my
Yeah.
god, I forgot Flubber existed, but I could totally
Right?
see it.
It's, for whatever
Why?
reason, just those horrible little mushy green things. I don't know. They skeeve me out.
Scared of
Ooh.
smooths.
The sentient snot balls are Cygnus's Achilles heel.
Great. Now you know.
Hey, mine was the elm-chanted forest with the racist mushrooms, thank you. We've already been
nice
over
plug.
this one. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not directing anybody to go and see that because fucking racist mushrooms are still with the teeth and the
What was this?
It was, I think, a Czech or Bulgarian film called The Elm-Chanted Forest. And my grandfather had a copy that he bought like when it was being sold off by a video shop. And we used to watch it around his house, but it was so uncanny valley that it was terrified me as a child. It's fully on YouTube if you go and look for it. But there's a scene in it where this main character, Painter, has been kidnapped by these mushroom people who live underground. But it's just like blackface little dancing mushrooms who grow fangs and try to eat him after singing a rap song.
Oh, come on now.
No, really, it's that bad.
Oi.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, that was mine as a kid. Mine was obscure.
Little you was scared of the racism.
Little me was scared of the racism. Yes. Right, I need a bathroom break real quick. So if anybody else needs,
Oh my god, yes, please, yes.
I actually,
consumed coffee and Pepsi, and my blood is bursting.
I actually need to duck out for a little bit, but if y'all are still going when I'm back, I'll rejoin.
Okay, doke. So
Ciao.
5-minute break for a second, and then we will welcome Goody back with open arms.
I'm so jealous. I can't whistle.
I'm not the best at it.
I cannot believe I forgot that Flubber existed. I feel like I've been teleported back to the 90s. Oh my fucking god.
You're talking about the one, the second one, right? The one that was Eddie Murphy. Who was in that?
It was Robin Williams, I think.
Robin Williams.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the only one I've seen is the Fred McMurray one.
Well, here, I'll give me a second. I'll post it. I'll post it. Maybe this might be a bad idea.
You're gonna traumatize some people. We've all purged it from our memory. You're the only one left to suffer. Fucking Chucky, though. I felt that one. I felt that to my fucking core.
Believe it or not, I've never actually seen it. I'd probably laugh at it today.
Yeah, in retrospect, totally funny. Like, it's really, it does not take itself seriously. It has no business being as scary as it is, but fuck, dude. I have a horrible phobia of dolls, like, to this fucking day, because fucking Chucky dolls were everywhere in every goddamn store we went into. Can't handle it.
Cannot blame you, honestly. I never liked dolls as a general rule. Fun fact, whenever I would get like an action figure or something, it would go straight to my sister.
Oh.
Well, doll phobias are very prominent and very well recognized. It's as much as, at least as much as clown phobias are.
See, growing up, I love my paternal grandmother very dearly. She's a super cool person, but she had this really weird fixation with porcelain dolls, the really old-fashioned ones with the creepy faces and the long, antique flowing dresses and hair. And I shit you not, she must have had like 100 of them. And she had wall-to-wall shelves, a doll room, completely done up. It was like a fucking doll store. Like, it was just shelf after shelf after shelf, simple wooden shelves stacked on top of each other, one corner to the other on all 3 walls, and then a TV. And on every single shelf, shoulder to shoulder, were fucking porcelain dolls staring at you, watching. And she put the PS2 in that room. So if I wanted to play games, I had to go in, little 7-year-old Sunny, and sit and be watched by fucking 200 little porcelain glass eyes staring. That's what I imagined they all sounded like. Yes, it was fucking horrifying. There's no feeling like just sitting on the end of a bed playing like fucking Bully or something and just feeling hundreds of pairs of eyes looking at you from every direction. Oh.
Grandmothers are such horrible people.
Oh, but I love her though. No, she's cool as fuck. She's like a butch biker lady, and she's like 75.
Kidding, of course.
You know.
Are you kidding? One's the German one, and she was all right. But the other one's a religious nut.
Mm.
Yeah, and that can stay in the recording. I don't mind. Fuck her.
Fuck that one.
Yeah.
We do all have that one relative. Yeah, my other grandma, God love her, she's a veteran, and you can tell.
Got it.
Yeah, older veterans specifically from ye old real bad times.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I'm back. I had to quickly get just a piece of bread because my blood sugar went.
And I am back too.
Nothing happened while you were gone.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
Don't review the tapes.
I could hear shouting from the kitchen through my headphones.
Probably me.
God damn it.
It was. And I was like, who's she talking to? Because I can't hear, but I can hear her. Sorry.
Is Little Mitt still choking you out in like a year? No, dude, I looked back through to see, because I was trying to find the Mumble server info before we started, because I didn't want to bother anyone. But I had to go like way back to when I first joined. I've been doing this shit with y'all since 2018? What?
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 Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, this podcast is like 2 years old now.
Fuck.
I mean, last year we recorded like 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Because I went back and reviewed the recordings, and one of them was like, oh, it's been like 6 months since we last did one. The following recording, oh, it's been 6 months since the last one. So right, okay, 2 a year, that's what we're averaging, okay?
I'm just going to say what you don't realize is that this podcast is actually recorded 2 years ago, and it's currently 2022. So
Fucking probably. You never know. Don't jinx it.
Yeah, we are broadcasting to you from the time of COVID and murder hornets and rioting. So fun times in the future. We hope it's better for you there.
I don't want to set the world on
Yes.
fire.
God damn it.
and he can sing too.
No, I cannot.
Yeah.
Yes, you
Shut
can.
up, Synopsis.
That was terrible.
No, it wasn't.
No,
Wasn't too
stop.
bad.
fuck.
actually.
You multi-talented bastard.
No.
Mr. Modest.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let them know I sing. I'll be in demand.
Well, now that you said that, it's definitely going to fucking show up.
Yeah.
Oh
It's the
yeah.
Streisand effect. You try and squash it, it just gets out more.
Oh, what was that thing they did on Bake Off? Pepsi, Pepsi, Pepsi. You're not allowed to post it now.
You think that with the amount of Pepsi Max I consume, they wouldn't listen to this and just go, actually, we could advertise on that.
Coke, then. Coke.
Don't you
I'm
bring your cocaine in here.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you don't have a sponsorship with Pepsi.
I don't have a sponsorship with anyone. I'm too foul-mouthed for all them.
Fucking mood.
Yeah. Right, shall we get back? Goody's not back yet, but we will carry on in his absence and then reinstate him when he gets here.
Yes, please.
All right. I'll close the fucking window.
What was that?
Right, okay. I'm back. I managed to accidentally close the window with the schedule in it. Right, so we just finished impressions of the prose style and tone and things. So we're on to the one that I think people have been champing at the bit to get at. Is this an example of a good crossover? And Narrator Pony put something in the document before he realised he wasn't going to be here. And I'm going to double up the points. Is this an example of a good crossover? And how does this crossover compare to other MLP video game crossovers with the looming presence of Fallout Equestria over our heads? Does anybody in particular want to go first on this?
Oh, I'll go ahead.
Go on, Cygnus, then Ilya.
I don't want to go first. I was going to say that. Let Cygnus go first.
Cygnus, go on.
I actually can do something to compare this to another video game that is not Fallout, but we'll get there in a moment. I have mixed feelings on crossovers in general. I think that they are derivative by their nature. I think that they lack integrity in the original vision. I think that everything from isekai to what was that horrible trend? Displaced? Was that what it was called?
What do you mean by that?
There was this period of time in like 2015 where every story in the featured box was one of these so-called displaced stories or whatever they were known as.
Oh, right.
You know
okay.
the ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was wearing this costume when I went to this party, and that was how I got transported to Equestria, and suddenly I'm Darth Vader. For real. So that's my baseline for a lot of crossovers. In terms of this particular installment, I think it is probably one of the best that I've ever seen done, other than the other one I'm going to talk about. And that is because it doesn't force the comparison. It takes some of the plot, it takes some of the settings, it takes some of the concepts, and it applies them purely to Equestria, to the canon that we know, to the characters that we know. It's not as though Pinkie Pie runs into James Sunderland and you can hear like the children applauding on the children's television program. No, maybe this is something exclusive to British television. Scribbler, do you remember when? Oh no, something like Sesame Street, right? Where they would like, it's Mr. Rogers, yay! That's the kind of thing. That's the kind of feel I get from a lot of crossovers.
I have clear memories of Nobby the sheep turning up in a lot of stuff.
Right? No, exactly the same thing.
And yes, there was a sheep called Nobby.
I can't remember. Was he Scottish?
No, he was from down south. He was like Cockney type.
Oh, Christ.
And he literally, it was a puppet that popped up and presented a TV show with a bunch of human presenters. But it was clearly one guy with two hands. So this puppet had a head and one hand. But it was a sheep. It was a very rubbery sheep in a black leather jacket and covered in buttons because it was 1992. And he turned up in Christmas pantos and things. And when he would turn up on stage, all the kids would go, way! And you're like, fuck it, it's Nobby the fucking sheep.
Exactly.
That's how he introduced himself, Nobby the fucking sheep.
As the R-rated version, the Ren and Stimpy Adult Swim.
Well, I mean, everything else is getting a reboot. Why not that?
True.
Oh, God. I was like 3. Jesus.
You know what? I was stuck in a shop with my mum ages ago, and she was in the changing room, so I just sat out on my phone, and Nobby the sheep popped into my head, and I don't remember why. Maybe I was just looking at sheep on children's shirt clothing, and I looked up the actor, and you can rent him for children's parties.
No.
Oh my God.
20 years later?
And he'll bring Nobby the sheep.
That is so sad.
He makes a heck of a living, because he was like, all puppet sidekicks in the early 90s were staffed and voiced generally by this one guy. But now he does children's parties because it has this notoriety of the people who were watching his puppets are now parents.
Oh, that's horrible.
I mean, talk about an easy paycheck.
But so to bring it back round, that is the energy that I associate with most crossovers. Is Nobby the fucking sheep?
Nobby the sheep in a panto crowd.
That's it. You hit it on the head.
So Silent Ponyville, thankfully, is not that.
Exactly. So that is one of the reasons that I will actually hold this up. Writing aside and lack of emotive depth in certain areas, as Ilya pointed out, aside, this is probably the best that you're ever going to get out of a crossover that explicitly sets out to be one. And the other one that I can hold up in that same regard is actually the MLP Mist crossover series that I did.
Knew you were going to say that.
I know. I'm predictable.
I remember listening to those. No, because I remember listening to them and didn't realize it was a crossover until I said to you, thank you for reading this. It was really helpful on Card Journeys. And you went, have you played? Or played what?
Now you know how I feel.
Well, see? Then I would say that this is a point in the story's favor, because it very simply takes the concept of being transported to other worlds, having to explore them, having lighter and better integrated puzzle elements than in this one, and we'll get to that, and just having a world where you have two people interacting, two of the characters, and exploring their environment. And that's really all you need. If you can walk away feeling fulfilled from the story without knowing the source material, then that is probably the objective best marker you're ever going to get for the quality of a crossover fic. And again, I've monopolized the time and I'm going to shut up now.
Cygnus, do you know what this means?
It means you're going to put it in the bloody description, aren't you?
It does. It's in the description. Everybody has to go listen to it.
Also, I didn't do a reading of Silent Ponyville. I don't know what you're talking about.
Totally didn't.
You absolutely did. Everybody should go listen to it. It's amazing. Because Cygnus is... We stand Cygnus.
No, we do not.
We do. We stand Cygnus.
Oh,
No,
we just love your voice. That's why we don't mind if you ramble.
Yeah, also, Cygnus has written a lot of his own fics, and they're pretty damn good, and you should go and read them.
For sure, yeah.
And now I've mentioned them, they have to go in the description so people can find them. It's like...
I swear, I'm never going to actually stop you people from nominating one of my fics, much as I really want to. But if you do, I will never forgive you. So let that be your battlefield.
Do not poke the bear.
If there's anyone here that would be able to be forgiven, I'm willing to bet it would be me.
Yes, but you can't
True,
pick this time.
But I have puppy dog eyes.
I don't care. You can sit there and be cute all you want, but no.
I actually got an email the other day from Bad Horse, who had discovered Hang, and he was just effusive with praise at how good your writing is. I had no idea. I said, yeah, he's good looking too. We all hate him for it.
Yes, I still have somewhere, because I screenshotted it. Gooty sent me a message at BronyCon last year. And I'm just standing in a room waiting with Xena and Starry and narrator getting ready to go in. And I just get this, bing, what's this? And Gooty says, Cygnus is getting changed. The bastard is built too.
Wow.
Like, quick, send help. Cygnus is hot.
Oh, Christ, I didn't even know about that.
Oh, you do now.
How expensive are assassins these days?
Free if you do it yourself.
I mean, you could go to the... Right?
And after this conversation, I may have to just do the work for you. Shit.
Right, so after the last We Stand Cygnus, Ilya, what do you think about this as a crossover? Because you, like me, have never played Silent Hill, but you knew even less about it than I did. So how do you think this coped being a crossover for the uninitiated?
Well, I haven't played a great deal of video games. I haven't played any action games, only some of the adventure games. The only other crossover that I read was the one that I believe was called Atros. Is that the one you were referring to, Cygnus?
Atron, yeah.
Atron, whatever. And I wasn't too thrilled with it. It seemed like, to me, he said, well, I don't want to plot anything, so I'll just use this video game plot and create the world over it. And it was dull to me. I didn't care much for it. So that's the only other thing I've got to compare it to. I don't have anything else. As far as crossovers in general, I think, in a sense, they're on a par with Human and Equestrian stories, sort of a guilty pleasure. I do like to read the Stargate SG-1 crossovers because I already know the characters. So you drop the canon characters from My Little Pony in there with the canon characters of SG-1 and stir it up and see what happens. And I kind of enjoy that, even though it's probably cheap shots all around.
I have to say, I very much agree with Ilya that crossovers sometimes your mileage may vary based on whether you know the thing it's crossed over with. I have an absolute sore spot for Buffy the Vampire Slayer crossovers.
Yay!
But also for different generations of ponies. Like, if I see not just G1 or G2 characters as background characters in Ponyville, but when they actually cross over the canon of G1's world with G4, like, I will read that even if it's absolute bullshit. I will read it. So, yeah, your mileage may vary on crossovers.
Do you read the Buffy ones?
I try to. I really like Buffy.
Please leave some links, because I'd love to
That
read a
makes two
Buffy,
of
but
us.
I've never seen one.
I'm writing.
Ooh.
That plug there.
That plug. I was actually genuinely trying to avoid mentioning that, but yeah, I wrote one in 2012 and found it on a hard drive and started posting it recently.
Can I just say
It was like,
that was so brilliantly rarity? I'm writing one. It was amazing.
anyways.
Just make it
Rings.
20% cooler.
Ilya is best rainbow dash. Right.
So, Scribs, but before we
Well, I'm out of a job. What are you talking about?
before we move
Yeah.
on, one question: if you do like effective and well done crossovers between generations, and you like horror to the extent that I think you do, have you read the Hoofwitch horror?
I don't even know that.
Ooh, I'll have to link it to you.
My favorite of the crossovers between generations, and actually, like, legit my favorite NLP Friendship is Magic story of all time is a Demon Slayer. I think it's called Stars and Ponies. It's by David G. Davidson, and it is absolutely my favorite story. And it crosses G4 with G1 in a way that if you knew nothing about G1, you can still enjoy this. But if you do know G1, it's amazing. It's about the reintroduction of Megan and how Twilight and the others would have to interact with her if that world and G4 world were suddenly connected by a rainbow and they discover they exist.
I like that.
Fascinating.
Sounds good.
It's ridiculously good. And the entire fic itself is technically unfinished, but the author wrote like an epilogue in a blog post and said, look, I'm actually writing full-time now IRL. I don't have time to finish this, but this is the ending I had planned in a very rough format. Like, I don't feel comfortable posting this to fic itself because it's so rough. I had no problem reading it. I thought it was still amazing. Like, fuck, this you're rough and this is my really good shit. But it's finished in that regard, and I will absolutely post that for everybody to read because it's my favorite thing in this whole era of fan fiction. So yeah, I've dominated that on a complete tangent. Lost. What do you think about the crossover elements of Silent Hill and Silent Ponyville?
I was just gonna let you keep going.
Yeah, don't. I'll just keep waxing lyrical about why Wind Whistler was taken in a totally different direction than I expected, but I still loved it. And it's fucking dark what happens. It's like legitimately, what do you do in G1 if all of the ponies are female apart from a couple of males and you have to keep the species going? Shit, that's going to mean harems. But they do it in such an interesting way that you're like, actually, this is fridge horror, but I kind of can't stop reading. It's so good. It's so good.
Sounds good.
I'll link it. But yeah, Lost. Silent Hill, please.
When it comes to a crossover, I mean, okay, so I actually had to look up what the actual definition of what a crossover is, at least on TV tropes, because I can't. The only other definition is from Urban Dictionary, and it's shit. But it's the idea that you're taking the characters and the settings from two separate worlds and mashing them together.
So would you call that a crossover or just like a merging of them?
It's I would consider it more of a, well, not even a merging, because technically it's not taking the aspects of what Silent Hill is. Technically?
Yeah.
You sound like Rainbow Dash sometimes. It's just amazing.
I can't help it. It just she just comes out whenever the fuck she
I'm
wants
sure
to.
she comes out.
God damn it.
I love it.
You know.
Lost.
What?
My brain is trying to remember something.
we later we will talk about that later with this group because I want to share it. We have to share the beauty of that. But yes, no, I don't think this constitutes as a crossover. Technically, if you're going by those definitions, technically it's not, because we don't have characters from Silent Hill showing up. We don't have the actual ideas of how people get into Silent Hill. Like, because I know, like, going a little further on, there's a story from Sam Rose called the Study of the Mind Delve spell. And what it is it goes into detail as to how ponies end up there and the mechanics of how Twilight basically gets Pinkie, and in later stories, obviously Fluttershy, into Silent Ponyville. And that's not the case with Silent Hill. Like, that's not it. It's so I feel like what this really is more of an homage to Silent Hill, and it borrows aspects of it, and then it uses it as a launching point, and then it builds from there. But like, I mean, Pyramid Head doesn't even show up, or like in the second one, if we're like really trying to do like, oh man, this is supposed to be the crossover. In Silent Ponyville 1, technically Harry Mason should be showing up. Technically, Sybil should be showing up. Alyssa, there should be some other elements, but we're not getting those characters if we're going with the correct definition of what a crossover is.
Sunny, do you have a follow-up to that?
So yeah, I definitely have mixed feelings on the crossover nature of this one, because we didn't do general opinions on this one, but I will say I actually don't like this fic very much. And there are aspects.
Ooh, controversial.
Yeah, well, that is why I said it was controversial last time, is because I don't like Silent Ponyville. And it is largely because while I do appreciate how it integrated certain game elements, this bleeds a little into our next point, which is, does knowing the source material affect the reader's enjoyment of the story? And we can touch on that more, but just knowing...
We can build it here.
Yeah, just knowing Silent Hill's story and why it was set up the way it was and what the original town meant and all of the elements that this story foregoes, it does dampen my experience and my opinion of it as a crossover, just because I'm amazed we have gone this long without mentioning it. A big thing in Silent Hill is that the monsters in the town are heavily symbolic. So they aren't necessarily symbolic of the protagonist's struggles. In Silent Hill 1, they are actually Alessa's monsters. They're not... Oh, fuck, what was his name? God damn it, I'm blanking. Harry? Yeah, they're not Harry's. In Silent Hill 3, it's kind of a mix, and in Silent Hill 2, that's really where it's established that when people who aren't main plot relevant wander into the town, they kind of get their own monsters, but they can also see other people, so it's like a mishmash. The symbolism and the thought that's put into the monsters in Silent Hill is so just intricate and lovingly done. Everything means something, and I love that about it, and that is not what I think the case was in this fic. I think it was kind of a slapdash. These are popular figures right now, so we're gonna put them in, like, oh, Cupcakes, Pinkie, and Slender Pony.
I wasn't sure why he was there.
Slender Pony is the main antagonist, not even Cupcakes, Pinkie. Slender Pony is the main antagonist, and it completely ruins the story for me. I cannot take it seriously with any degree, because I cannot, no matter how the story justifies it. It feels like the first thought was, I want Slender Pony in this fic, and then a justification was made for why he's there. I couldn't. For almost that reason alone, I think it's a bad crossover, just because, I mean, come on, come on.
Even not knowing anything about the story, the Slender Pony thing just seemed crammed in there to me.
Was.
I really didn't get that.
Because it was.
I assumed that was something about the story I didn't know about, but I thought, God, this is awful.
Same. I thought maybe Slender Pony, because I didn't know anything about Silent Hill or the Slenderman mythos when I first read this back in like 2013, 2012-ish, when I listened to Nimbus Productions reading of it back in 2012. And I thought maybe he was part of Silent Hill and that was his origin. I was really surprised to find out that wasn't the case. I'm like, well, what the fuck was he doing there then?
Who knows?
I know that Slenderman has a mythos of technically kidnapping kids. Like, there is that is linked to him. But it this is why I say Silent Ponyville 2 is better.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to that.
I don't necessarily agree that Silent Ponyville 2 is better, but in terms of monsters and symbolism, by a fucking mile. Because I could say anything about how it compares to stories like Fallout Equestria, because Fallout Equestria, as much as I love it, it's one of those stories where I'm like, I love it, but it is so flawed. There is so much wrong with it, and especially if you know the source material, like, it's just straight up ripped from the games. And I really appreciated that this fic didn't do that it just took mechanics and elements and some story beats or some references and integrated that into the world. Because when I read crossover, I do prefer that they be the characters in the world, but not necessarily interacting with the established characters of whatever is being crossed over. So like Fallout Equestria, I liked the original take on a Fallout wasteland without necessarily needing the exact characters, until they showed up as ponies. Oh, that's a rant for another day. But
when Goody gets back, you can rant about that to your heart's
content.
But
with this one, it didn't do that, and I did really like that. So in a way, it is a good crossover because it handles the integration the way that I would want a crossover too. But God, what a missed opportunity with fucking Slender Pony. I cannot take it seriously. Anytime I start to get into the story, because I've listened to this, God, at least a dozen times. I really do like the readings done of it, and I like the atmosphere that it builds, and I start to get into it, and I'm like, I can even overlook Cupcakes, Pinkie Pie, you know, that's fine. I understand the reasoning for that. But then we get to fucking Slender Pony, and I just can't. So for that reason, it's better than Fallout Equestria and other crossovers that I know of. That does not necessarily mean I think it's a good crossover.
Well, it's so funny you should say that because, you know, clearly we agree on the whole, you know, effective use of mechanics and tone and generalities. But when I was saying my 100,000 word spiel that you very neatly condensed down to about 20, you're very good at that.
It's the same brain.
Right? Even having read the story this morning, Slender Pony went right out the other fucking ear. Right? It is such a non-entity, and it is such an obvious placeholder that it didn't even strike me as being worthy of discussion. So
It should have just been a random monster.
honestly, it should have. And again, I think, which one is it?
Like
this time?
literally, your persona of just the dark pony shadow that would have fitted.
Well, except then I'd have the stigma of that hanging over me.
we still stand sickness.
We do.
No, but okay. What are we calling you? Sunny. Yes, I have to keep looking back at the name. It's terrible because I've gone through Honey, Sunny, and Possum in my head,
You'll get
and
there.
it's just not good.
Oh yeah, you were possum for a bit.
I'm a lot of things. I cannot be held down to one nomiker, and you will get used to it.
Oh, everything about
Queen of nomenclature.
But no, you make an excellent point there, and it really does detract from the story. And honestly, it does feel exactly like what I was just saying to Scribbler, the Christmas panto. Oh, it's Slenderman, everybody clap now.
Mm-hmm.
It's when a celebrity turns up in a sitcom in America and the audience loses their fucking minds.
Yes.
It is like Mark Hamill on Big Bang Theory. The moment he turned up, nothing else mattered. Because it was Mark Hamill.
I'm just IRL shaking my head because my brain is. I'm trying so
SMH.
hard, even to this day, having heard this story so many times, reread it so many times. I'm trying to force my brain to acknowledge that Slender Pony is a part of this fic, but it mentally rewrites it to be a different monster because I just cannot. I cannot discuss this fic without fixating on that. It's just a blinding fucking light.
But Slender Pony is like the best creepypasta character that
It's
ever
so
existed, along with Jeff the Killer. And what, you know, it's so topical. What are you talking about?
It's timeless. Certainly won't go out of fashion, be overused ever.
No, never.
You know what's the absolute nail in the coffin of, yeah, that's not fashionable anymore? When Hollywood makes a movie about it.
Oh, tell me
Fucking
you're
Slenderman
joking.
movie that came out 5 years after Slenderman stopped being
We
relevant.
don't talk about the Silent Hill movies.
Oh,
But the Silent Hill movies, that's my garbage.
All
Okay.
the Resident Evil ones.
No, at least the Resident Evil ones are fucking fun, okay? And Silent Hill 1, the first movie adaptation, I said we weren't getting into it, we're getting fucking into it. At least a little bit, you have to let me have it. Silent Hill 1, the first adaptation, not that bad. They actually got someone who knew the material, who wanted to adapt it without it being a straight up game rip for audiences who didn't know the game, so it's Silent Hill fucking 2. Fucking...
The only issue I have with the first one is that the director basically inserts women everywhere and men become the background. It becomes a feminist piece, which is okay. Whatever. We're girl power. Fucking yes. But like, it completely just removes Harry Mason. Like, fuck you. You don't matter in this now. Now it's the mom. Fuck it.
Well, he does, because I watched commentary on why he chose that, and he said he thought it would be interesting to explore from a motherhood perspective. Like, as he was writing the story, it just seemed like the tone fit motherhood better, and he wanted to see that element that we didn't see in the game. So I appreciate it for just wanting to be a different perspective, but I feel like if you were going to focus so hard on the mom, you should have made the dad just a non-entity like the games do with the mom. Like, just completely gender flip it.
Instead, we get this weird side plot of him going to try and, like, figure out what the hell's going on with, like, the police and... It's a train wreck. It's so bad. But it's my garbage. It's okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like Silent fucking Hill, is the one movie that Sean Bean does not die in, right?
Exactly.
Yes,
That's
yes,
the funniest
it's the one.
thing. It's like every other movie he dies. Put him in the horror movie, and he doesn't die.
They had to sideline him to save him.
That's the best bit.
But the second movie, though, I pretend like that doesn't exist. We don't talk about that. That's just
The
I
Black
didn't
God.
know there was a second one.
no. The second one, Pyramid Head is a hero, and he saves.
What?
And what's his name?
Exact
The fucking
bullshit.
creepy dude is a love interest.
What?
Oh, and Jon Snow's in it. Jon Snow
Yeah.
is part of the
Oh,
cult.
come on.
Oh.
It's such a bullshit fucking story.
It's one of those that you can only watch it if you're drunken with friends.
Yes, actually, that is the only way to experience it. I showed, before I had Mag sit down with me and watch me play Silent Hill 2, I made her watch those movies, and she had no context for the fucking series, and even she said the second movie's bullshit.
Fun fact, we saw it in theaters 3
It's-
times because the first time was to hate watch, and the other 2 times were so my girlfriend could take notes of every single thing they did wrong. I am absolutely gonna force her to hate watch it on fucking camera at some point because she loathes that movie. She loves Silent Hill, and they just fucking
Oh my
butchered
god.
it.
I have one word for you. GootyCon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We need to have
Yes.
goody
Oh my god.
After quarantine and things, we need to have goody con.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I haven't smiled like this today.
So do we want to continue on with symbolism, or
I mean, I think it would be a good idea just at least address it.
Did
We've talked about crossovers.
did we
and
want to?
yeah,
Have
I
we
think like,
touched yet on source material affecting the reader's enjoyment? Do we feel like we got that?
let's. I think it has come up enough in the crossover. The idea that Ilya and I don't know the source material, it didn't affect our enjoyment. I think that actually knowing the source material seems to have been the worst thing for some people. Cygnus?
Yeah, honestly, in some respects, I'd say that, yeah, you're pretty much bang on the money there, especially considering, what we've been saying with tone and atmosphere and the generalities being much more interesting than the specifics. As I've been saying the whole time, I honestly cannot see a reason why this should not be a standalone story other than to get views. And I don't want to throw the author under the bus here, but it's a good concept. It's a good conceit unto itself, and it's been done beautifully by a lot of people in a lot of ways. Going into the inner realm, into your own head, figuring shit out, coming out a stronger person. If you want to keep the monster symbolism, if you want to keep the dilapidated town, go for it. But there is nothing that is so specific to Silent Hill that this required the name tag. And even if you just changed the name, if it just hadn't been Silent Ponyville, I think the little bit of nose tweak that you get going in and seeing all of the Silent Hill-esque puzzles might have been a little bit more clever and a little bit more of a wink. But as it is, like I said at the beginning, you get exactly what you pay for going in.
So, regarding that, our next point is symbolism. Interesting or annoying as fuck. Does anybody particularly want to start on the symbolism in Silent Ponyville rather than Silent Hill itself? Sunny already covered that Silent Hill is renowned for its symbolism. There's a particular YouTube channel I adore called Ragnaroks, who does go into detail, and I will link him below, about some of the monsters and how full of symbolism they are. Does Silent Ponyville really measure up in terms of how it uses symbolism? Anybody care to go first?
Yes and no. I think that it does particular symbolism well, but the symbolism that Silent Hill is known for, particularly the monsters, no.
Okay, so what symbolism do you think it does do well?
Something that Sam Rose stated was that they often struggle with whether something should be a comic or a fic. And I can really relate to that because Sam Rose is an artist and so am I. So we both have the issue where we visualize something really heavily, like where everything is placed out and like how it would look as a comic, and then kind of translate that into fic format when we write a fic. And I think that bled over into their style a bit when it comes to writing, because I did notice a heavier focus on color symbolism, which is something that I covered, pun unintended, when we did Cold Hand of Mercy. Is just a refresher. Color symbolism is the aspect of color theory where certain colors evoke certain moods or mean certain things in classic literature. And Samrose really uses a lot of that if you pay attention. Like, each jewel is specifically colored, and just general environments are described really well. Something I felt that they did particularly well in the prose was just the way that they described everything. And I think Ilya brought that up before, is just they were so good at picturing how every scene was supposed to look and translating that. And particularly, it'd be a lot to go through to pick out each individual scene and what each one means. But in terms of symbolism, one thing I think they did do really good was just making sure that each color reflected the mood really well.
Rocket to Insanity was a fic before it was a cartoon, wasn't it?
Yes, Rocket to Insanity was a fic that ends at the point where Rainbow has stabbed Pinkie. Pinkie has died, and Rainbow's crying. Lost did an adaptation of the original story.
Oh no, I was gonna say yes about that.
But the comic that you were in, Ilya, because Ilya was a leading character in that, was based on an alternate epilogue, and then the artists themselves carried it on.
I'd like to see someone illustrate vampirelence one day. I think that would be fun.
Yeah. that great white whale.
May or may not have been planning something in the works. No, nothing.
What?
Oh
Sonny,
man.
I didn't say anything.
Oh man.
No, Sonny.
At
no.
least a little something. Maybe
Yes,
not
yes,
a full-blown
yes,
comic,
yes.
but an homage, if you will. That was such a perfect cat noise. I thought your fucking cat
I
was
was
in
like,
the
did you
mic.
just meow?
Yes, I know. Well.
God damn it.
Right, we're going back to Silent Ponyville and away from Scribbler's half-finished vampire story.
I thought it was very interesting to learn that last bit, Sonny, that that the writer is an artist. Because one of the other complaints that we have, that I think may be explained by that, those fucking ellipses. Those are panel changes.
Oh, yeah. You're right. When I'm drafting, I have to try really hard not to overuse ellipses, because I picture the break of the scene, so that totally makes sense.
Yep.
It's a scene break.
It's the same thing I do, because I'm coming at this from film. And I don't know if I've made that clear in the past, but yeah.
That is interesting. Like, at this point, I think some people may not notice a lot of the use of ellipses in fanfiction just because Twitter, where the indication between one tweet and the next is indicated by multiple ellipses. Yeah, it's interesting to read into it and see how a background from a non-writing perspective can influence the writing in that way. For the record, Motherly Scootaloo, that was the word.
Ah.
The comic that Samrose is also known for, apart from Silent Ponyville. So if you've heard of one, you might not have heard of the other, because they are two wildly different genres.
I just wanted to mention once again the balloon, because I thought that was the best bit of some symbolism in the whole thing. There's probably a lot of other bits that I didn't get because I don't know the games, but the balloon one was really good.
Mm.
Also, I'd like to, at this point, before we go any further, say that I've come to the realization that we are in the middle of a crossover podcast. Because in my mind now, we're 4 humans and Rainbow Dash involved in the podcast. And I can't get that picture out of my mind.
I'm here to talk about my feelings about this damn story. Thank you.
I love this. The only problem with it is that you're so much more intelligent. I'm not used to hearing this sort of thing come out of Rainbow Dash's mouth.
Oh man! Oh, but she's so dumb. That's why I love her.
See, now we just need Sunny to do her Applejack impression.
You're not getting that out of me. Pay me first.
Yes, you are. Come on,
Nope.
come on.
Oh, come on, AJ. Why don't
I
you come
haven't
out?
done that in for fucking ever, and you will not get me to do it here.
Oh, you're no fun.
I don't even know if I would remember how. It's been so fucking long.
Hey, Jay!
Oh, what's up?
What's going on?
Did you see we finally got married? Ain't that great?
I
Yeah,
mean, in some universe, I don't know about that. I don't know.
Oh,
In
me,
this universe, I'm with Pinkie.
Okay, Twilight, your turn.
I love how this just degrades into pony voices. It just degrades always into Norse horse
Well, this
noises.
server is apparently used for roleplay when we're not using it, so it fits.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Oh, man.
What now?
Oh, did you not hear about this from last time?
No.
My keyboard is dirty now.
Oh dear God.
Yeah, last time when people were waiting for me to turn up at Easter, it was literally Easter Sunday, and we gathered up to discuss narrator's choice. And randomly, this guy called Uthred arrived and announced, "I'm here for the role play." And we'd say, "This is a private server." He said, "Oh, we always meet here," and he left. And then we just kept randomly having people drop in who had turned up to use this thing for roleplay, which was not helped by the fact that Gooty's name at the time was Bootius Sex Grenade.
Oh shit!
Furry Gangbang 69 or whatever from MTV.
Yes! Narratus logged out and logged back in again as Furry Vor Gangbang 69.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
Yeah, so, but literally just throughout the podcast, every so often they'll go, "Who's that? Oh, they've gone!" So, which is why I had to change the password. But yeah, this was the site of many roleplay games when we went around, apparently.
So I have something to add to symbolism.
Go on.
'Cause
Just get back on that, please.
Let's try. So I am such a sucker for symbolism. I love it. I love reading stories where the symbolism is there and I have to like dig for it, because I love prose like that. That's always been one of my favorite things. But in this story, it's a little weak at times. Like if you go to Sam Rose's DeviantArt, there is a bestiary actually of all of the monsters, and it explains what the symbolism is for each one. And of course Slendermane is on there because we're just, if you ignore that bit,
I said if you ignore that bitch, then.
yeah, I mean, same thing. But if you ignore it, I actually like it. Like, especially considering this is like the first in Sam Rose's progression as a writer. It's pretty good. Like I'm always been a firm believer of like, okay, as long as you're growing as a writer, I am willing to forgive certain aspects of a story, especially if it's rough. Like if it's rough. But I love the symbolism in it, especially like the puzzles and like the little aspects and little intricate things that like when you go back and read it a second time, you're like, oh, that's what that fucking was. I love those kinds of moments. Silent Ponyville 1 doesn't have as many. I feel like 2 is a little bit better with that. But I appreciate it. I love it. Like the symbolism of the, like, especially the monsters, like of the white filly, the groaner. I feel like we were already talking about it, but Slendermane is just, no, we don't stand that. But the other monsters, I think did a pretty damn good job of like conveying symbolism and Pinkie's, turmoil, I guess is the best way to put it.
I've linked it in the server chat, but I'm going to read out just from the bestiary from Sam Rose's DeviantArt, because there aren't actually that many, as Lost said. So the groaner, the symbolism. The groaner represents Pinkie Pie's fear of what becomes of the victims of the cult. Their pain and suffering was slow as the cult took its time, so the creatures are sluggish. They attack out of blind fear, unable to be comforted. Got the white filly, symbolism. The white fillies represent the figure of Pinkie's younger sister, Bellamina, as the cult made her suffer. It cries out constantly out of pain, but it can't be silenced, so its voice rots its mouth. The blindfold represents Pinkie's desire to be blind to their suffering. Slendermane, so apparently it was Slendermane, not Slender Pony. Slendermane represents Pinkie's fear of the cult. The very presence of this creature fills Pinkie with fear. Getting close to him causes her pain. He towers over Pinkie because Pinkie was a filly when she met the cult. His presence overbearing on her younger self. His featureless face represents Pinkie's desire to not remember the cult. He's a nightmare of her past that she must overcome. The Pinkie Pie, so not Pinkie Must Prime, but the cupcakes Pinkie. Pinkie self-hatred and guilt personified. Self-hate of the fact she forgot about Bellamina's death and continued to throw parties. Guilt that she thinks she'll be the reason other ponies die. Pinkie believes that she killed Bellamina with her own hooves by bringing her to the cult, and that she'll kill everyone else. The only way this Pinkie can find redemption from the random death of her sister is to kill randomly, so it wasn't a meaningless death. And the pink demon, the one that turns up and collapses through the ground, the physical manifestation of the cult's hunger for pony flesh. Its size is due to how insatiable Pinkie saw his hunger to be. With how many ponies he has eaten in his basement, it seemed that he had a giant, never-ending appetite. The pink colour represents the imagery of a stomach with the mouth connected directly to it.
Meh.
So it's... Thanks,
Sorry.
Siggy.
In-depth,
Well.
extensive descriptions of these deep topics and what each one represents, and then,
No, I mean, let's be fair here. You know, it's good that a little bit of post hoc thought is going into this, and maybe the Philly I can see being carried across in the original story, but none of this is something that we should be having to find out from secondhand. You know, the story should have been able to carry it off by itself.
I can see that. I think that this level of symbolism, it's not especially deep. It is there, but it gets better in subsequent entries in the series. But I think it speaks of the immaturity of Samurais when they wrote this. This will have... With all the greatest love in the world for Samurais' works, this definitely speaks of somebody who was quite young and thought this was the deepest thing ever. But because they hadn't explored much else, and as their writing went on, the symbolism got better. But it strikes me as very immature level of this is deep.
Oh yeah, no, it's more of like a surface level. The fact that we have to read it in order to get the symbolism, that shouldn't be. But I still appreciate it. I don't know, maybe because it's me. I'm always a firm believer when it comes to amateur writing. Like, as long as you're trying and you're like the attempt is there, like I see it and the passion's there, but the execution, it's like you get a C. You get a C for execution.
Yeah.
You try.
I think all of us can look back at something we've written before and just gone, I thought that was so good at the time.
Oh yeah. For me personally, there are plenty of things that I've written that's the case. And I guess maybe that's what resonates with me with this story. But and there's a part of me too that even thinks like if Sam had gone to this much, like obviously there's a bestiary, there's all these other separate things. I mean, hell, in some of the alternate endings, which we're going to get to, there are comics. Why didn't Sam just make this a comic? Because I feel like that would have been much more like well received in that sense.
well, they did try to make it a game.
Did
Yes, no, there is the game. Yes, they did.
Really?
They tried to make this a game.
I did not know that.
There is a playable demo as well that is still available.
Wow. What year was that?
Like 2012.
Yeah, like right when
Yeah,
it was made.
2012.
Wow.
Yeah, this series, or even like the first one, there are countless. Somebody has gone on to make a fan comic. There's the game. There's tons of music that has come out just from this story alone that has influenced a ton of brony musicians. Obviously all the fan art. It's very like telling how impactful this story was. But like if you look under it as under a critical eye, you can still see that it's rough.
I would love to see this remastered, ideally by the author, but I understand they're mostly out of fandom now and don't have time, but remastered as a visual novel.
Yes,
Right?
it would be good as a visual novel.
I know somebody's done it, but it's okay. Like I've seen it. It's all right. But like if Sam was actually the one to take a hold of this and do it, like I would be all over that.
It's a shame. It's like, do you have bills to pay, Sam? Could you maybe like make a visual novel out of this?
Patreon.
Yes!
Patreon. Do it.
We made this Patreon goal. Does anybody have anything to add about symbolism then? Nope, we're moving on. So, right, we've kind of covered number 9 of conversely, does being ignorant make it a better or worse reading experience? We've kind of done that one already.
1 point on number 9.
Oh, go on. Go on then.
I do think they enhanced the story just because, if not for the fact that it's so so accurately and successfully adapts the game mechanic if you're into the game mechanics. I think they add to the story in that they add suspense, because yeah, you could cut out the fat and just have it be the basic emotional elements of the story, but I like that the puzzles forced the story to slow down and made Pinkie explore areas she wouldn't without a given goal to chase after. Like, where does this key go? I need to find this thing to go do this other thing. You know, I do feel like it added suspense and an element of mystery to the story that it wouldn't have had without it.
I agree that it helps the story if you have played the game, but I don't think those those puzzle elements were just confusing without it. So I think, yeah, I would have loved it if I'd played the games.
Maybe you should, Ilya. Maybe Let's Plays are where your channel is going to go now.
Oh my god, I would watch the shit out of that. Please do
Yeah.
that.
I will say, Ilya, I do genuinely think you would like Silent Hill. At least Silent Hill 1. I think you would enjoy it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I think it might be a game I almost played once years ago because I was there when it came out. I was already into adventure games and I was always perusing Adventure Lantern or whatever it was to find the latest one. And that came across and I thought about it, but I just never did.
It is very
Adventure
good.
Lantern. Man, I have not heard that name in a long time. Right up there with Just Adventure.
They're still
Are they
there.
really?
Yeah, Adventure Lantern and Just Adventure.
Son of
both
a
there.
bitch. All right, I'm going to have to go look at those.
Link in the description. Funny enough, from what you just said earlier, the next point is, do the puzzles enhance the story or bog it down? So since you had something to say on that, what do you think, Ilya?
Exactly, both things are true.
Oh,
They enhance the story if you've played the game, apparently, and they bog it down like hell if you haven't. That's just the way it is with me.
no, I agree. To be honest, you just encapsulated my thoughts. Yeah, I thought they bogged it down, but that's because I didn't know the game. Cygnus, what do you think?
As someone who has played the game, I absolutely think they do bog it down. You know, it's comparable to... let's use this for an example. There's a Halo novelization, all right? You don't need to know every time the Master Chief reloads to be able to carry it across in an effective way. You don't need to know what you don't need to know the trajectory of every bullet, every scream of every Covenant soldier that dies to be able to carry across the story in a way that is engaging, that does not require you to play the game, even if you are in fact using the mechanics in an effective way, etc., as we've discussed. Here, it felt kind of tacked on. I understand what Sunny's saying about forcing her to slow down. Like I said before, I'm all for the introspective aspect of this, but when it's literally riddle, 2 lines of exposition, oh, this is the solution. Not really grabbing me.
Yeah, I will agree. As much as I think the puzzles do add to the story and it would be worse off without them, could have been executed better.
Am I
would've
right
worked.
in thinking, Cygnus, that the missed MLP, it's been a long time since I listened to this, the missed MLP story that you did a reading of on your channel, that has puzzles in it, doesn't it?
That's correct, and it carries them off better. I wouldn't say it's perfect, and there are definitely problems with the story that were apparent on first reading and on subsequent readings, but there's a lot more discussion that goes into each one, and a little bit of world building and a little bit of characterization for both of the characters, Rainbow Dash and Twilight, who end up there and having to solve these things. And maybe that's what this story is missing, is really seeing each puzzle through the Pinkie Pie lens.
Yeah, I think what would have made it work, and it's the same thing that makes puzzles in video games work. If she'd received the key and immediately starts ruminating on about what it could mean, where it could be, and all the different things. Oh, what if I tried it here or there? There wasn't enough consideration of what the ramification of the puzzle might be. That's what made it bogged down.
Right. And also, she never really ran into questions before she ran into answers, if that makes sense. Right? Like,
No,
you know,
it's too convenient.
Precisely.
Because in Myst and in, you know, something like Monkey Island, you run into a situation and it is the situation which forces you to come up with the solution. For most of this story, she is handed the keys, like in one example, when our friend Slender Pony just decides it's time to go home. We all remember that, right? Where the bell rings and he's just like, fuck it, I'm out. It's my lunch break.
I thought that was leading up to something.
Yeah.
I will say, I don't know when the Silent Hill movie came out, but I think that was supposed to
2006.
be... I think that was supposed to be an homage to the sirens changing
It
the
was
other world.
2006. The
Oh,
movie.
that's an homage to the sirens. That's what that is. But if you don't have that context, it doesn't make any sense. Like I saw it more as like the homage to in Silent Hill 2, where Pyramid Head comes out for the first time and James is getting his shit kicked in, and then suddenly the sirens go off and you're like, oh, he's leaving. Okay, what the fuck ever. You know, it just makes like if you don't have the context of the game, it's very, very, very pointless.
Well, and I can understand that. And that was, obviously, that's one that's escaped my memory in the many years since I've played Silent Hill 2. But if I remember correctly, that was the end of a chase sequence as opposed to, okay, you also have a key now. You know, you just have to kind of stand.
No, the one that I'm thinking of specifically from Silent Hill 2 is James goes into a room and Pyramid Head is there, and the platform is above water, and you're basically forced to confront Pyramid Head for a set amount of time, and he doesn't die. He can't die in this area. And until the sirens go off, you basically just have to deal. But once the sirens go off, Pyramid Head goes down the stairs into the water and he just disappears, and the water sinks and you can finally leave the apartments. It's the last area in the apartments.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, it's that. That's what I originally saw that as, kind of, but it's not as executed as well. But yeah, that's what
right,
that's
which
from.
may be the problem I'm having. That makes sense. Okay, I'll give you that one.
Okay, I'll give you that. Ilya, what is
May
that
I
noise in the
ask a-
background? I'm just curious.
You talking to me?
Yeah. There's a tea kettle.
It sounds like a grind. Well, no, I thought it sounded like key, like you were trying to make a key. Like it sounds
Or a
like
train.
grind keys. Something. Or a train. There we go. That too.
Oh God, that's my teapot.
Oh,
Thank you
it's
so
going on
much.
for like 10 minutes.
I forgot I put a kettle on the stove and I
Oh,
forgot about it.
Look at you. All
It's
right.
screaming. Let me go get that right quick.
No,
Excuse me
you're
just a
good.
second.
You're good.
It's gonna be all nasty and crusty. All the water's gone.
Oh, man.
You come back,
Oh
it's
my
like it's
God,
been a hole in the bottom. We saved
That was the
Ilya's
best.
tea kettle.
Them's Writin Words, doing good since 2018.
Saving tea kettles and telling everybody to fuck off. That's what we do.
There we are. I couldn't hear because I've got noise cancelling headphones on.
Well, you know they work.
That's amazing.
I have to rely on people on the other side of the world to let me know my tea is ready.
What are friends for?
I love it.
Now, I wanted to ask a question, though, please.
Go on.
What the fuck was this radio phonograph thing in her
Oh.
backpack? I never understood that.
Okay, yeah, that. So in the Silent Hill series, there is a way, it's a mechanic used within the games to let you know that there are enemies nearby. And in Silent Hill 2, it's a radio that the main character carries. And when an enemy comes nearby, the static picks up. And that's pretty much what it is. That's what it's supposed to be in this game. Or not the game. See, even I'm calling this a game. It's a fucking fanfic. Shit. But that's what it's supposed to be used for. It's basically like the warning system.
Well, that was the weirdest thing in the whole story to me. I never got that.
I will say I don't see why it couldn't just be a radio.
Right? That's what I was thinking. I'm like, why the hell
If
is it a
vinyl
phonograph?
can have
What's-
fucking
whatever.
turntables, I think they can have a radio.
But hang on, had vinyl appeared
Yes.
in canon at that point? She has.
I
done,
checked
so there's no excuse. then.
specifically because this was a point that I had intended to talk about, but we covered it.
So yeah, there's no reason. Like with Slender Pony, there's no reason for that to be there. Okay, so NP added this one, but I'm pretty sure it was because he knew Sunny wanted to talk about them, because this is something you made sure to mention last time we recorded, Sunny.
Yes.
The alternate endings. Which was the best, and what did you like about them? So Sunny, since you are quite attached to this point, you want to go first?
So this was also to force myself to read them because I had heard this more than I actually read the fic, as tends to happen. I tend to listen to audiobooks instead of bothering to read the original fic, just because it's easier when I'm drawing and stuff. So I specifically wanted to make sure that everyone actually read the fic, and specifically read the endings that you don't get when you just listen to the audiobook, because I do think that adds an element of not just mimicking the game mechanics, but like it brought out discussion about the order that the chapters were played in and what that could mean and what that called back to. And I thought that was interesting. But I also wanted to discuss just the content of the endings themselves. And if I hadn't put this, I would never have read the Chinko ending, which is the most recent and last chapter that was added in like 2015. Much better written than the rest of the fic. So that's, proof of the author just evolving in their writing style over time. But also, holy shit, best ending. Obviously not canon, but God, it was more of that I wanted in the main fic. It was so fucking funny.
Yes.
So you want to explain, because we're in spoiler territory, what was the pachinko ending? Because what is pachinko? For those who don't know.
Okay, so you're gonna ask me to define like 10 different things here. So for starters, pachinko is basically just a Japanese slot game. Like a slot machine, And I think pachinko might be a word for 2 different games, if I'm not wrong. I think it might mean the slot game and a specific kind of game where you like get the little trinkets out of little baubles. They have them at like GameStop now, where you get a token and then you put it in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's used for 2. In the Western culture, it's used for that, but for Japanese, it's a slot machine.
Yeah, so in Pan, it would be a slot machine, and, Silent Hill is a Japanese franchise, and I'm assuming that's what the author meant. So pachinko is that, and I would imagine one of the reasons why there is a pachinko ending is because there is a Silent Hill pachinko game, where it's Silent Hill themed, but it has nothing to do with the main series, and it's obviously just a gimmicky knockoff, like an arcade game or something, So I would imagine it's an homage to that. I'll admit that I only skimmed this one just for time's sake, but oh my god, Pinkie's dialogue was amazing, and the opening line rips so hard on the state of the actual franchise right now that I couldn't not make it my favorite. Like, the true ending is obviously fine. I'm not partial to the other ones, but holy shit. The sheer level of just... there's no other word for it.
It's 264 words. Do you want to just read it out?
We have like 3 narrators here. Why don't y'all take that one?
I was also going to suggest, too, that because I'm not sure if Ilya and Scribbler know the history of why this ending is so savage.
I was going to ask that, too.
That's what I was going to say, that we should probably explain that.
I have no idea.
So Konami, who owns the Silent Hill franchise, over the years has really bastardized the series. It has really gone downhill. And for monies. The biggest thing was that Silent Hills was announced at one point, which was supposed to be a really...
It was on board to do that one.
Yep. Hideo Kojima, Guillermo del Toro. It was very star-studded. Yes, Norman Reedus. It was supposed to be like a revival of the series. Konami canceled the whole damn thing and instead sold the rights or the IP for gambling. Konami has a subsect of their company that specifically is for gambling. And you started seeing Silent Hill gambling machines. You started seeing Metal Gear Solid gambling machines and things like that. And it basically just, instead of giving us a new game, instead of actually doing anything that the fans actually wanted, no, we got a fucking pachinko machine. That's what. And there's a thing that on Twitter and on many different YouTube channels of hashtag fuck Konami because of how poorly Konami has treated their fans over the years, with their IPs and things like that. Things are hopefully changing because they've just put Pyramid Head, who was the main antagonist from Silent Hill 2, in Dead by Daylight, which is another game. They've licensed out the character and Heather Mason and a bunch of other things for them. So there's hope. But that's why this ending 7, the pachinko ending, is so savage, is because Sam is making fun of the current state of things, at least in 2015. That state.
On that note, who would like to read it out? Because it's only 200 and some words.
Cygnus for the Pinkie impression.
Cygnus. Cygnus for Pinkie. Cygnus, will you be Pinkie? I'll narrate it if you'll be Pinkie.
He's playing dead.
Cygnus, get your ass back in
Oh, I wasn't holding down push to talk. That's my mistake.
it.
No, I will not be. I will not be Pinkie Pie. You can be Pinkie Pie. I will narrate.
Oh, for fuck's sake, I can't do Pinkie. It's like one of the characters I absolutely can't do. Even when I
Ilya.
try, it's like, nope, that's just a higher pitched.
Ilya, please.
Ilya
Ilya's
is Pinkie. Yes.
Please.
Oh my God.
what,
yes.
what part would you
Pinkie.
like me to play?
Pinkie Pie.
Yes.
Pinkie Pie.
As
Yes.
high pitched as you can possibly
Sure.
go, please.
And Goody, since you've just returned, can you read the hit the lever? Because I feel like you would do the most
Yes.
justice for that.
Wait, what are we reading now?
We're reading-
We're reading the 7th ending, the pachinko ending from Silent Ponyville.
Oh my god, hold up.
Yeah. So you should be the hit the lever.
I'll narrate it. Ilya's being Pinkie, you're being
Hold
Nicola.
on.
Or do you want to narrate
I was
it? Yes,
narrating it,
Cygnus is
yes.
narrating it.
You
Cygnus
can't
narrating-
take this
I
away
love
from
this.
me.
Okay, narration
I
should
don't-
include
I think
everything,
this is far funnier if you narrate it.
including the unlock
Oh,
condition.
absolutely. Whereupon, ending 7, Pachinko. Unlock condition, fire Hideo Kojima, and forget what it means to be a video gaming company.
I finally understand now.
Pinkie said softly, shaking her head slowly before looking at the slender pony with a smile.
My fear of your presence, your stature over me, your very existence. I know what you've been all along.
The slender pony just stood there, unchanging from Pinkie's words.
Just tell me what it is you need from me, and I'll do it.
The pale, slender creature moved in understanding, raising its hoof slowly into the air. Pinkie looked at it with curiosity as it pointed at her. In a deep, booming voice, it cried out,
Hit the lever!
Pinkie quickly slammed her hoof down on his raised hoof, the world breaking apart into a world of flashing lights and colors.
300G!
I'm going for the high school, baby!
Pinkie grinned widely as the reeling slots appeared in the sky behind her, cranking down again and again on the slender pony's hoof as the world danced in the flashing lights and fire.
Plus 100G! Chance!
Slender Pony screamed from the top of his lungs as Pinkie madly pulled the slots again and again. Pinkie had once thought that she understood the pain and hardship of her past, that she had taken the time to come to terms with it. But she was wrong. All she needed in her life now were the slots. With every pull of the slender pony's hoof, she knew she was coming closer to Nirvana.
This was
So the
this was
pachinko
everything.
ending is the best
This was
ending because
I-
it led to fucking that.
That is the
Yes,
best.
it did.
That is the best clock pick I've ever heard.
right. Fucking right.
Ah,
We need more Pinkie Ilya in
we
our
do!
life.
Call it Pink Ilya.
That physically hurt.
You physically hurt you. I laughed so much. I'm sitting next to a wall. My head threw back because I was laughing, and I think I've concussed myself.
Oh God.
I'm gonna have a fucking asthma attack.
It's amazing. Just Ilya going.
And you thought
That
I
was-
could pull off anything nearly resembling that.
I cede to your wisdom.
Oh, that was amazing.
Oh, I think I need a
That was the
cigarette.
best.
A little Slendermane, apparently.
The only thing worse...
Sounds like she hit her own Nirvana.
The only thing
Oh,
worse than you
man.
saying that, Scribbler, was the fact that I was thinking it at the same time.
I bet you need
Oh
a
my
cigarette.
God.
It's the British brain. Cigarette.
Christ.
I don't get it.
Pull it, baby. Pull it. Pull it.
I love it. Whew. So that's the best ending, no question. No need to discuss.
I think we've all died.
My brain malfunctioned. I was still processing Pinkie.
Corpsed to death.
Fucking trophies to Cygnus for narrating immediately after the first beautiful reveal of Ilya's Pinkie because the choked attempt to not laugh as you started that line was so fucking much of a mood.
Glad I got the tea now.
I'm so glad I was muted for all that because I was dying. Fucking hell.
The thing you have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are all professionals here. And we never ever make mistakes. And we never ever corpse.
I'm gonna have a fucking stroke. Oh my god. So endings. Any other thoughts?
My face hurts. I have thought it's not as funny as that, but I actually really liked the one where Bellamina came.
Yeah,
was
I did like that one too.
I agree.
I didn't see that one coming. That for context, the ending 3, it's a twist. It turns out that Pinkie was the one who died those years ago, and Bellamina took on her persona in the real world. It was very much a Camp Sleepaway type ending, only without, with less poor actor being made to wear a little girl's face while standing there with his cock out at the end.
Fuck!
What?
I was trying to.
Well,
Have you never watched Camp Sleepaway?
I know what you're
Sleepaway
talking about because he
What?
killed him, but I didn't need to be reminded that existed. Oh, his fucking creepy molded mask face.
And the
Oh.
noise.
Oh no! I forgot about that.
You all need to go watch Sleepaway Camp. It is a gem of a weird horror movie
It's
from
so
the 80s.
bad, but it's so good.
So good. It's the room of horror movies. Yeah, anybody else got anything more intelligent to say? I thought I was being more intelligent.
Good
but then I
effort was
decided to
made.
talk about, weird 80s penises.
As opposed to the other
was
variety.
there any?
There was an unnecessary adverb.
I was gonna ask, was there any endings that you guys didn't like?
I mean,
The first one, Game Over, where she's just fucking dead. It's 100 words. Pinkie Pie dies. Twilight. Pinkie.
more sacrificing story
Man.
for game mechanic reference there.
I mean, what do people think of the UFO one? Because up until Pachinko, the UFO one was the silliest ending.
That was the body swap one, right?
No, the twist. The twist one is the body swapped one.
Oh,
The
okay.
UFO one is an homage actually to Silent Hill again, because there is a UFO ending in each of the Silent Hill games. And usually it ends up with the character going behind the scenes, and there's a dog. There's a fucking dog for some fucking reason, that it was the dog all along, making the town as fucked as it was. And that's what the homage is to.
it's also what Toby Fox's persona homages to, as I'm to understand.
Oh.
Yes, it is. Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale, is an homage. His persona is also an homage to that.
What did people think of ending 6? Sam.
It gave us certainly the best image out of any of them, which is to say,
Okay.
Pyramid Head doing his best rendition of Hello My Baby, Hello My Honey.
I will admit I didn't actually get as far as the ending Sam, so I'm looking at it now and going, this didn't look familiar. Fuck, I missed one.
I loved the ending for
Yeah.
that one just because, I'm so glad they were aware about not having a fucking Pyramid Head reference. Didn't apply that logic to Slenderman though, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been worse. If Slender Pony hadn't been there, it might have been Pyramid Head the whole time.
No.
Don't say it. Not my baby Pyramid Head. Don't
Pyramid
say that.
Pony.
There have been some really bitchin' fan arts of Pyramid Head and things like that, but I think that's the one line I don't want crossed, as I don't want Pyramid Head in this series, and I know that sounds really fucking
No,
weird.
it makes sense.
It could be like in the movie where he just randomly appears and rips a lady's skin off via her boob.
To have
That,
Or he could be the hero.
literally-
He could be the hero.
Well, literally, my first exposure to actual Silent Hill was walking in one day while my mum was watching the movie that she'd rented from, I think it was like a lingering Blockbuster back in the day. And I walked in to ask her if she wanted coffee, and the first thing I see is this Pyramid Head ripping a lady's dress off and then grabbing her tit and ripping everything else off. I'm like, what the fuck
Yeah.
are you watching, mother?
Yeah, we don't talk about the second one.
I'm
That
fairly
was
certain
the
that was the
first
first
one.
one, because I remember that.
That's
Oh no, that
the
was the first
first
one.
one.
Yeah, that's
Isn't
the
that-
first one.
Doesn't she do that to Sybil?
No,
Oh.
Sybil
Yes.
gets burned alive.
Oh.
Oh yeah, she
is
gets
that
tied
the
up and then
lady on
burned.
the police officer.
Yeah.
Yes.
But only after
Where it
being
was a
invaded by
very long.
chains.
Yeah. Well, she was burned alive in this very prolonged scene that showed all of her flesh burning off, and like she did nothing wrong. What happened?
Yeah, little baby wannabe Butch Sonny watched that movie and nearly cried when the Butch cop died.
Aww.
Remember that the gay characters can't live in this fucking
Hey.
timeline for some goddamn reason, because what the hell is representation? But we're not gonna go there.
No, hey. In Silent Hill 1, you can have either ending, either the one where she dies or the one where she doesn't. It's not contradicted in canon. So in fucking, what is it, Schrodinger's Sybil,
No.
she's still alive in my heart.
Hey,
Schrodinger's him. Yes. God damn it.
So yeah, them's the alternate endings. The actual ending Gooty covered earlier, which segues nicely into our next question, because the truth ending, the true ending of Silent Ponyville, segues into Fluttershy, who is the star of Silent Ponyville 2. Which does beg the question, based on all of our discussion so far about the prose style, the themes, the symbolism, the video game crossover mechanic itself, for those who've read it, which is better, Silent Ponyville 1 or Silent Ponyville 2? Who would like to go first? Lost, you've made yourself quite clear on this that you prefer the second one.
Oh, I mean, I didn't want to be that person and be like, yes, I'll go first. But
Completely
if
welcome.
no one else is going, yes, Silent Ponyville 2, in my opinion, when you're comparing the two of them as pieces, is better. The symbolism is better, the prose is better, the overall mechanics, it feels more fleshed out, and you can tell that Sam at that point has more of a bearing as to what is going on within the story. Like it's just so much better. And that's just me, because it follows more of the second game, and the second game is like my favorite game of all time. So the fact that should already be, I already have a bias there. But when you're comparing the two, I don't, one's not as good. I don't like it.
It's significantly longer, the second one, isn't it?
Yes, the second one I believe is 56,000 words.
52,706.
Yes.
Whereas this one is about 30,000.
I'm on the same page as Lost, actually. I think Sam really found what they really telling the story, because there was a much broader world built at that point too in that neck of the universe.
And also in canon itself.
Yeah, and the other thing that I like about it is the issue that is tackled is much more like relatable in a lot of ways.
Oh
without
yeah,
spoiling
no.
it, so
My biggest thing is I like the characterization Fluttershy gets, because up to that point when I read 2 and when I did the reading of 2 and everything, Fluttershy hadn't had her family explored in the show. So for me, it had always been a personal headcanon. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense as to why Fluttershy is the way she is. It for me personally, because I've known people like that. I've known people that have gone through that. And then they decided to tackle it in the show, and then I just cried because I was like, well, there goes my headcanon. Fuck everything. But I too, on many levels, is I like it. I like it because of what it does and the things like that, and because of my own personal experiences within like certain subject matter, and I can relate to that. But it's a much more compelling story than 1, at least if I was to, when I'm comparing the two of them.
Sunny?
See, the fact that it's so relatable is why I can't say that I completely think Silent Hill Ponyville 2 is better. Because, without spoiling the ending, when I re-listen to the reading of this, because I do listen to this one a lot too, and I would agree, like, just character-wise, interaction-wise, writing-wise, so much better. I can't listen to the last chapter because it is controversial. Am I allowed to spoil it just to say what I don't like about it?
Yep. Spoiler warning, if you haven't read it, listen to it, stop here, because we're spoiling the sequel now too.
So a heavy theme in it is abuse, and the ending, the true ending, it's too close.
Specifically,
it's too close to victim blaming for me. I can't, because she apologizes for being forced to kill her mom and then being beaten for it. And I just can't get past that point. The fic was fantastic right up until that ending. And we get to that point and I'm like, I can't listen to this because it's no, I just can't jive with that. Even if it's not necessarily touting that as like the proper way to go about that, even if it's supposed to just be in character for Fluttershy or whatever, I cannot listen to a story that has that kind of scene and does not explicitly say this is wrong. She shouldn't have felt like she had to do this.
Oh no, I completely agree in that sense. That is probably my biggest gripe. If we ever do a Silent Ponyville 2, that is my biggest gripe. Because of the fact that that shouldn't even be a fucking thing. But I do know that somebody wrote a fan piece to this story that actually sends Lance, who is her father, into Silent Ponyville. And then he's forced to basically deal with it. And it finally gives you the conclusion that it should have fucking had in the first one. But it's...
So for that reason alone, I will say I think the first one's story is better just because I feel like the resolution and the emotional beats work there for me, and I don't really feel any like extreme controversy over how she goes through it. Like it touches on survivor's guilt, and I think it handles that pretty well because I know what that's like too. So it manages to be relatable without being so opinionated on the matter, whereas Silent Ponyville 2, where it's excellently written and the character interactions are so good, and Fluttershy is so remarkably in character for the situation she's put in. And I don't even like Flutterdash. Even the ship was handled well. Like I was like, all right, in this universe I can kind of see it, yeah.
Oh, yeah. For the longest time, I was actually a Flutterdash shipper. It wasn't until I started dating Mag that I became a Pinkie Dash shipper. But for the longest time, I was a Flutterdash.
Mm-hmm. So even not shipping that, like, I think that was handled well. And to get me to appreciate a ship that I don't ship is a fucking feat, I'll tell you what.
I know! I have been privy and participated in many a rare
We are in the company of a rare Jack shipper, and I will be polite.
I know.
Be nice.
I know.
Be nice. I'm not...
I will say I understand Fanon Rarajack a lot better than I understand Canon Rarajack. So I can meet halfway on that. There are fics where I can appreciate it.
Yeah.
But
True.
Yeah,
On
no.
the writing.
it says something of Silent Hill Ponyville 2. What a fucking Silent Ponyville 2 that Silent Hill Ponyville 2.
Fuck yeah.
The fucking remix. It says something that it can have so much ship in it that I don't ship normally, and I almost ship it just in this universe just because of how it's handled. But that ending, though, I can't, man.
So one of the alternate endings for you then in that, because again, that one has alternate endings. So pick your poison. So the final point we have here is Sam Rose once said that they originally wrote Silent Ponyville to prove horrifics could be better than cupcakes. Do we think they succeeded? And this is a point put forward by Suni. So Suni, do you want to kick us off on this?
Yeah, so again, we touched on this at the very start of the podcast, but that was like 3 hours ago. So, just to retread, I think in retrospect, knowing that, it's very obvious because they do kind of like make their Pinkie directly contend with Cupcake's Pinkie and kind of describe them as separate forces that shouldn't have met. And it almost feels like they wrote that scene as, I don't know, like a meta-breaking reference to the fact they are literally pitting their Pinkie Pie story up against Cupcake's Pinkie Pie. It was so on the nose. Again, I can't tell if I love or hate that, but overall, succeeding, it's really hard to compare a start of fandom one-shot to a tiny bit later fandom multi-chapter crossover fic, but I don't think they succeeded just because they had to borrow so much from another concept where Cupcakes is more original material, even if it was heavily influenced by other media at the time. And I think Cupcakes has a broader appeal, even if the grammar doesn't really hold up.
Cygnus, what do you think?
I'm sorry, what was the question? I dipped out for a moment.
That Samurai's once said when they originally wrote Silent Ponyville to prove horrific could be better than cupcakes. Do we think they succeeded?
I'm conflicted about whether or not this is really a horror story in that respect. It does the gore, and it does exactly what we talked about with the kind of Saw style gratuity. Let's put it in that phrasing. But in terms of real horror, I think most of what it does that is actually horrific, it borrows rather than doing unto itself. The part about the cult, that's very well done. That's very creepy. That's very good horror, and a real concern for a lot of us, especially those that have small children in their lives. Yeah, but in terms of the gorn, to mash two words together in a way the internet does, no, I don't think that's very effective.
Gooty, what do you think? Does it prove that horror can be better than cupcakes?
Come back to me in a second on that, actually.
Okay, Ilya, what do you think?
Well, I didn't read all of Cupcakes. It's hard for me to say.
You know the basic story of it.
Yeah, I know the basic story, and I just don't really see. It's a different kind of horror story, but better or worse. It's to show that it would be better. I think it would have to have more elements of Cupcakes in it, other than just the first chapter. I just think it's a good comparison. It's not a fair comparison. It's good and bad, and Cupcakes was good and bad, but in different ways.
Oh, Lost. What do you think?
I feel like I'm going to be the only one who actually thinks yes.
No,
I'm this lone person on the hill. Because I've read Cupcakes and I've read the Silent Ponyville series, and Cupcakes is what got me into the fandom, but then it was Silent Ponyville that kept me. And maybe I'm looking through it with nostalgia glasses and the rose tinted glasses and all that shit, but I genuinely think that it did succeed in that sense, because it was sort of like it took Cupcakes and it kind of flipped it, because it was just like, oh, okay, like, because Cupcakes is Gorn. It really is. It's there. It's glorified. La-di-da. I don't give a shit. But Silent Ponyville added that extra layer. And there's another series too that's an add-on to the Cupcake series. I think it's the Cupcake Chronicles that did the same thing, where it adds that extra layer because Cupcakes is shallow. It's just ugh. And this, at least, I think it did. I think it proved that horror fix can be better than Cupcakes. And it was like one of the first that did it. Has it aged well? No, it has not aged well. But I'd like to think that there are other stories now in this fandom outside of this that have gone above and beyond what, like what actual like grimdark and horror within the fandom can be. But I would think it did.
I think Rocket to Insanity did a much better job of improving it.
It really did, but the prose on that is so much worse. Because I've done a reading of Cupcakes and Rocket to Insanity. I pretty much had to go through and rewrite the entirety of it, because the spag, the overall of it is just atrocious.
Rocket to Insanity, the entire story is about 4,000 words and was one paragraph with no full stops.
Yeah, there's no full stops. It's
Pass.
and I it's so bad.
No, the writing is what I was referring to. It's the story. So.
Yeah, the story itself probably branches out a bit more. Cupcakes, in my opinion, I don't know if it even counts as horror. It just feels more like shock fiction.
That's
It counts more as shock fiction,
but it's still horror.
That's what I was gonna actually kind of dive into on my plan. I was just trying to think of a way to phrase it properly.
Well, just to say, Goody, would you agree that it's like the human centipede of fanfics?
I would say either the Human Centipede or later Saw movies.
Right. Yes.
I was thinking more later Saw movies because there are other stories that kind of constitute as the human centipede of the fanfic community, but we're not talking about those.
Yeah. See, when it comes to horror, like I like to like divide it into like kind of subcategories. When it comes to like, is it gore / torture porn? Is it paranormal? Is it suspenseful? And if anyone here has heard my rendition of Cupcakes,
It was amazing.
it is more also an homage to how I feel about it, in that it is not my favorite thing. Let's just put it delicately.
I shall go and listen to that.
It's
Link in the description.
Okay. Oh yes.
You'll be doing yourselves a treat.
No one has mentioned Rainbow Factory. How does that factor in?
Well,
No.
I think
Rainbow Factory at least had decent spec.
the Cupcakes is written with the idea of how much can I push the envelope. Not when I think of good horror, I think of characters developing when they are at their worst, when they are at their bleakest. And that's one thing I love to see in horror, which is why I love the Silent Hill series so much. And that's not to say that's a make or break when it comes to good or bad horror, because there's some great zombie movies out there. The Resident Evil series is hella good early on, but I think when you compare to the way I view Cupcakes, which is how far can I push the envelope, I think he did do a better job at conveying, especially as he continued his writing.
So, unless anybody has anything else to add, we'll head into final thoughts. So, does anybody have anything they really want to add about Cupcakes, Silent Ponyville, or anything else we've discussed?
I'll amend my opinion, just clarify that I think they're both about equal in terms of quality. I think it's difficult to compare them. If you really wanted to try and do Cupcakes but better, you would probably have to make it a one-shot and not root it in anything else. Otherwise, you're writing a lot on nostalgia and love for another series to coast your fic through in terms of that comparison. And I think they both kind of get a lot of that nostalgia view that Lost was talking about, where you kind of overlook their flaws for the fact they were what got you into fandom.
Exactly, and honestly, that was what I was going to say in my final thoughts, so I guess that segues nicely. You see?
So, final thoughts then. Cygnus, do you want to give us your final thoughts?
No, pretty much exactly the same thing. I think Gooty had a point, though.
What was the Gooty's point?
Yeah, Cygnus, what was my point?
Well, no,
they're sharper than I am, believe me.
No, I saw you flashing to talk.
Oh, you saw Goody flashing. Good dear.
Oh, what else is new? No, you can go ahead first. Go ahead.
Okay. No, roughly the same thought. Honestly, I think I would have liked this a lot more, and I don't think I got the chance to talk about this because my internet crapped out for the entire discussion of Silent Ponyville 2, but I've never read that because this one turned me off it. So I honestly think that I would have liked this better, and I would have been more willing to give it a chance as a series if it hadn't had the Silent Hill association. Competent for what it was trying to achieve with that, but unto itself, I think it really would have been better if it had had a little bit more thought put into the world building that didn't rely on outside material.
Gooty, your final thoughts?
All right. Well, when I read this story, it was in 2011. In that year, my highs were really high, but my lows were really low. And getting the chance to set aside to read, to kind of discover the fanfiction world for the first time, essentially, this was a really good window to it. And I can see how the way it's aged. But at the time, I was completely in love with the idea of this, of just blending these two aspects into two things that I really enjoyed, and being able to conjure a story out of it. Like, you can call that simple-minded if you want, but that to me at the time was an incredible idea, and that I will die on that hill on that point. But
I'll die with you on that hill, Goody.
We'll set up a camp. Hell yeah. So That said, yeah, I do see the story for its weaker points, but I will always appreciate it for what it got me into and and the memories that this one stepping stone made along the way. I know this is kind of getting to like a big sappy, oh my god, I have all these friends thing, but it really does have that. It really does hold its place in like my own personal history, and to know that I have that kind of share in like the love of a genre like this is I'm glad I was able to, you know, do a reading of a fic that had such an impact on my life. So despite its flaws, I will always appreciate this fic for, you know, my own personal reasons.
I think that's the nature of fiction, that you get out of it as much as you put into it. And if you've got that frame of reference, even the most flawed of things becomes beautiful. Ilya, what do you think?
If I had played the games, I probably would have enjoyed it a great deal more. As it was, I got rather bored in chapters 2 and 3 and 4 because it didn't make any sense to me, and I kind of sped through the chapter a little bit. But on the other hand, if it hadn't had that part in there, I wouldn't have been able to be exposed to this writer's excellent grasp of writing scenery and atmosphere, which I really thought we did a good job of.
Lost?
I'm pretty much on the same page with Goody. I've always held a firm belief that I can love something but know it's flawed, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's the idea of being able to enjoy something but still seeing that, oh, it's rough around the edges, or it's, you know, could be better in these places. And there are lots of things that I like consume media wise that are that there is crap loads of that. But with this specifically, the Silent Ponyville, or just Silent Ponyville, this the first one, is I love it in the sense of the homage to the game, because I am a huge Silent Hill fan, and I know that's a big point for a lot of people. I love it because of the ideas of the struggle of what Pinkie's going through and the way that the atmosphere, the tone, and things like that. But it hasn't aged well. Like, I know it hasn't. And Sam's aware of that too. I know Sam is aware of the issues of the story, but I still love it. And like Goody was saying, I found the fandom because of cupcakes, but I stayed because of the Silent Ponyville series. And I wouldn't be the lost narrator now, if it wasn't for the fact that I did that reading of the second one, and it was because of the first one that I got into it. It's a whole bunch of fucking layers. But I do think, though, for people that are like, oh, should I read it or listen? Like, I really think this is one of those stories that does better as a audio, or as an audiobook. There are certain stories that I've come across over the years that I'm like, oh man, this doesn't translate well in text, but god damn it, is it going to be good as an audio drama? And I've seen that time and time again. And the Silent Ponyville series, when it's read, actually, I feel like it does a lot better that way, especially when there's, like, you know, obviously like a narrator helping along with like the tone and the atmosphere and things like that. But yeah, I would recommend, like, if you have played the Silent Hill games, for anyone that's actually still interested in it, who's been spoiled by all the spoilers, whatever. But if you know someone who's played the Silent Hill games and is into Pony, recommend this, to be honest, because especially with that context, I feel like a lot of people will love it.
Sunny, have you already? No, you haven't.
Nope.
Sunny, have you given your final
I have
thoughts?
not.
Right, yes. No, I was thinking, like, I always end on the fic picker, but have I this time? Time has no meaning anymore. Sunny, as the fic picker, what are your final thoughts on this then?
I come out of the podcast with pretty much what I felt going into it. I still don't like Silent Ponyville as much as I do like listening to audio adaptations of it, and I agree with Lost there, where I feel like this is so much better as an audiobook than just as a book itself. And even Silent Ponyville 2, where I would agree that the writing is significantly better, I just love it as an audio adaptation so much more, because I feel like that atmosphere and the mood it tries to set comes alive there. So I might not recommend people read it, but I do absolutely recommend people listen to it.
And all links will be in the description. So, the final thing we have to do before we end is spinning the wheel. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Cygnus and Guti are the only two who haven't, from regular cast, who haven't picked before, isn't it?
Granted, this is only my second time on the podcast, so...
Yeah, and I think this will be my first for this rotation.
Right. Lost, would you like to come back next time? If you do, I can add you to the list. If you don't, I won't.
God, never. Why would I even come back? Fuck.
I don't know.
No, of course.
Well, have a think quickly about what fic you would want us to pick if your name comes up.
Oh, fuck.
Also, I've just written apparently Gutiel instead of Guti and then gone to a new line for Lost.
Is that my Undertale OC?
Oh my god, please, yes.
Bitch. I love it.
Yes,
It's random just to hear Cygnus randomly swearing. Right, I shall spin it then.
It's because I'm here. It's just it
It seeps
the F bombs
into
and it just seeps into everything.
Right, but it's spinning, and it's deafening me. Guti!
Yay!
Guti has been picked.
Oh god. Pressure's
Guti,
on.
what would you like?
I will get back to you.
Quick
on that.
Google.
No, you've got to say it. We can pause while you go and find, like, if you do what narrator did. Shit, what did I listen to last? But I can, the wonder of editing, I can clip this out while you go pick something and then pretend it was just segued naturally.
It's going to probably take me a good chunk of time to peruse for something that I want to like have a good old multi-hour discussion on. So
Okay, so watch this space for Guti's pick. But next time we will be discussing Guti's pick. Name insert.
Just Microsoft Sam voice that shit in.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just Lost. Just said actually. No. That popped up and just completely derailed my thoughts. So yeah, next time will be Guti's pick. I'll probably put it into the video itself because I'll know by the time I actually edit this fucker together. We have been them's writing words. So it's goodbye from us. Goodbye from Cygnus.
Goodbye. That's me.
Sorry, goodbye. That's me. Sorry, I'm a bit punch drunk at the moment. Goodbye from Guti.
ciao, beautifuls.
Goodbye from Ilya Leonov.
So long, everyone. That's me.
I've started to think again.
Narrator. You have started to think again. It's better than when you were riding on a Quassel.
I hope you guys are staying awesome, feeling awesome, and being awesome, and I'll talk to you guys later.
And Sunny.
Goodbye, I'm Sunny. Had to wait for my girlfriend to stop blowing her nose. She looked at me like a deer in headlights.
I love the fact that you waited till she'd finished, but then announced it anyway.
I'm publicly shaming her. She said, fuck you.
Oh.
Can't believe you didn't bring her on here for the discussion of Silent Hill.
Someday.
Yes. When you said she's a massive fan, it's like, okay. She listens to you right
Hey, Opal, what are your thoughts on the Silent Hill 2 movie?
I hate.
She says she hates them. Scream for me. Give me your raw
That
animal
wasn't
scream of
even
how
a
you feel.
break.
She put her face in her hands and rolled one eye to look at me with such contempt and disgust. So that's how she feels about it.
Hot damn.
The fact there wasn't even time to draw a breath. The moment you started the question, she was like, hate. just hate. Right. And I've been Scribbler, again, moderating all the shit. Thank you, and goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
So, Goody, what are you gonna pick?
I suppose that
Wow.
that's the
just
sound of
ripping a
me.
nasty
That's the sound of
fart.
me.
Wow.